Chapter 756. It wasn't easy to cultivate the thunderclap ninth heaven. Thinking back, Ling Han was struck by lightning for several days in order to attain minor accomplishment in the body of lightning. To improve the body of lightning, one had to continue being struck by lightning, absorbing the essence from the lightning and gradually improving. This was extremely slow. From Ling Han's cultivation to minor accomplishment until now, the steps he took were pitifully small. It couldn't be helped. Although lightning strikes were extremely terrifying, for the body of lightning, the lightning essence contained in it was extremely little. To be able to attain major accomplishment in 50 years, Ling Han already considered it extremely fast. It was indeed fast. Major accomplishment of the body of lightning corresponded to the Shattering Void Tier, and how many Shattering Void Tier warriors could cultivate it in 50 years? In the past, that was simply unrealistic, and even the deity transformation tier warriors might not be able to reach it. Only now, with the flourishing age of martial art, speeding up the formation of elites, reaching the Shattering Void Tier in 50 years was truly possible. However, the benefits brought to Ling Han by a flower of lightning surpassed the sum of the lightning strikes he received previously. How shocking was this? Hun Yo, you're definitely my lucky general, Ling Han said spontaneously. Hun Yo was happy, and said proudly, Nyo is Ling Han's lucky general. The two continued forward, but to Ling Han's disappointment, they didn't encounter another flower of lightning for a long time. After walking for nearly 30 minutes, they finally arrived at the second flower of lightning. Hun Yo moved again, plucking the strange flower. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry to refine it, but stored it in the Black Tower. Now, he was more interested in the valley itself. What gave birth to this river of lightning? After walking for a while, rumbling could be heard, but it wasn't from the river of lightning. Ling Han was shocked. He turned to the other side and saw that another river shockingly appeared, but what surged in this river wasn't real water, nor was it lightning but flames. It was hard to imagine that the flames surged like a river, and even made loud noises as they slapped. If this was magma, it would be easy to understand, but it wasn't. It was pure flames, and there were patterns flickering in the flames. Astonishingly, Ling Han also discovered vein-like patterns of the thunder element. Previously, there were flame patterns in the river of lightning. Could it be that Ling Han had a conjecture? The thunder river and the fire river had intersected before, which was why they affected each other. Continuing forward, it didn't take long for the two rivers to converge. However, to Ling Han's surprise, the two rivers didn't cross each other, but merged together. There was only one river left. Lightning and fire flowed in the river at the same time, but they were clearly separated. The well water did not interfere with the river water. One white and one red, it was extremely dazzling. Ling Han came to a sudden realization. No wonder the two rivers affected each other. It turned out that they came from the same source. Although they eventually separated, it was inevitable that they would still affect each other. He was even more curious about what was at the end of the river and why it could produce such a wonderful scene. However, it became more and more difficult to follow the river. Due to the intertwining of the lightning and flames, the resulting power was even more terrifying. Even though they weren't actively attacking, the lightning constantly shattered the nearby space, while the flames turned the valley into a true furnace that could burn everything. Nyo doesn't like this place. Even Hun Yo began to complain. She didn't fear the lightning, but obviously wasn't immune to the flames. Beads of sweat appeared on her face. Ling Han was speechless. Only beads of sweat appeared, but he was already sweating like a stream. Keep going, and if we really can't stand it, we'll retreat, Ling Han said. Although he was very curious about this place, he wouldn't risk losing his life here. After all, his cultivation was still low, and he could wait until he reached the Heaven Tier or the Shattering Void Tier before coming back. However, just as they were about to give up, the river of lightning and fire reached its end. They came to the bottom of the valley, and in front of them was a mountain wall. The river of lightning and fire surged out from below the mountain wall. There was a cave in the mountain wall. It was pitch black and no one knew where it led to. At this point, whether it was the power of lightning or flames, they all dropped to the lowest point. Although it was still very fierce, it was at least within the range of what they could bear. Ling Han looked at the cave and hesitated slightly. The cave could hide the secret of this valley, but it could also contain endless danger. Should he continue forward? He only hesitated slightly and decided to move forward bravely. He still had an instant teleportation talisman, the Black Tower, and even the power boost could temporarily possess the battle prowess of the shattering void tier. What existence in this vast lands could instantly kill him? Go. He held Hunyo's hand and walked into the cave. If the situation turned bad, he would immediately put Hunyo into the Black Tower. The cave was very dark, really dark, so dark that even when Ling Han opened the Eye of Truth, he couldn't see anything. He raised his right hand, transforming origin power into flames, but he clearly felt the rising flames, but didn't see the slightest bit of fire. It was as if he was blind. However, if he turned around and looked outside the cave, he could clearly feel the surging river of lightning and fire. Ling Han couldn't help but be shocked. What was going on with this cave? Previously, in the purple fog, only his vision and divine sense were affected, but at least they could still be used. But now, it was as if he was truly blind. Not only could his eyes not see, even his divine sense couldn't sense anything. If it weren't for him holding Hunyo's hand, he definitely wouldn't have sensed that there was another person beside him. Right, he also lost his hearing. Strange, too strange. A great sense of alarm rose in his heart, but Ling Han still took another step and continued forward. The more it was so, the more curious he became, wanting to know the reason. Small tower, do you know what this place is? He used his divine sense to communicate with the Black Tower. There's a sliver of source power. Small tower revealed a hint of caution. If you find it for me to swallow, I can repair 100 million more. Fuck. Ling Han wanted to curse. This place was so terrifying, the river of lightning and fire surged, emitting the brilliance of the shattering void tier. Just thinking about it, he knew that the source was incredible. But it could only repair 100 million of the Black Tower, so if he had the chance to live, would he be able to see the Black Tower reappear with divine light? Be careful, Small Tower warned. If there's life here, killing you would be too easy. Nonsense. Ling Han didn't bother to pay attention to it, and simply continued forward. This was pure darkness. He couldn't see, hear, or smell, and even touch was disappearing. He clearly held Hunyo's small hand, but found that the touch was getting weaker and weaker, as if he had become a walking corpse. He couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb. What kind of lousy place was this? It was too strange. After an unknown amount of time, Ling Han finally couldn't sense anything. He didn't even know if he was still walking in this cave. Losing his 5 senses, what difference was there between him and a walking corpse? He told himself that he was searching, but had no idea where he was going. Did he bump into a wall? Because he couldn't feel anything, he couldn't sense anything even if he kept banging into the mountain wall and wasting his energy. Forced to do so, he entered the Black Tower. Chapter 757. Ling Han didn't enter the Black Tower alone. Hunyo was with him. He breathed a sigh of relief. At least he didn't get separated from Hunyo, or else finding the little girl in such an environment would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. Now, his 5 senses returned to normal. This practically made him feel the joy of regaining a new life. Zhu Xian Air just happened to come over, and Ling Han rushed up, hugged her, and kissed her enchanting cherry lips fiercely. He smelled the faint scent of her body, felt the slight heat of Zhu Xian Air's delicate body from his palms, and the plump touch, all of which made him feel a sense of reality. Zhu Xian Air didn't think he'd be so passionate, and couldn't help but be startled, then blushed. There were others. However, her delicate body soon became soft and hot from Ling Han's kiss, and a soft moan came from her small mouth. She opened her arms and hugged Ling Han like a snake, kissing back fiercely. She was aroused. Ling Han reluctantly let go of the beauty in his arms, and awkwardly discovered that as they kissed, his right hand actually climbed to her chest. Truly, one didn't need to be afraid of not knowing the goods, only afraid of comparing the goods. This girl's size completely crushed Helian Sun Shui's, and it was somewhat difficult to grasp with one hand. It was very elastic, and if he could grasp it without any gap, it would probably be even more slippery. Tis. Wayaya, Nyo's angry, Nyo's angry. Hu Nyo was driven mad and glared fiercely at Zhu Xian'er, looking like she wanted to slaughter her. Ling Han laughed loudly, walked over to pat Hu Nyo's head, and said, "Be good." Hu Nyo still pouted, unable to withdraw her killing intent. Ling Han summoned a pig trotter and handed it over. The little girl didn't take it in a fit of pique, but she couldn't resist her gluttonous nature, and soon took it and gnawed on it, her small face immediately blossoming like a flower. As long as he coaxed her with food, he'd succeed. Big Brother Han. Zhu Xian'er was like spring water, tender and alluring. She just returned to her senses from that long kiss, her almond-shaped eyes blurred, so charming that water could drip out. "Adulterer, adulterer," muttered the rabbit. Ling Han recounted his encounter in the cave. Zhu Xian'er only felt terrified, but the rabbit said, sealing off the 5 senses, "This is definitely a great elite. If you were to face such an existence, you wouldn't even know how you died. Indeed, if you lost your 5 senses, how would you know where the attack was coming from and where your own attack should be directed? But Nyo can see," Hu Nyo said as she gnawed on the pork trotter. Her mouth was covered in oil as she waved her little hands around, slapping all over Ling Han's body. "You can see them?" Ling Han was surprised. Hu Nyo nodded heavily. Though this was very inconceivable, Hu Nyo was too freakish, so why couldn't she do it? "Then Nyo will lead the way later." Ling Han patted the little girl's head. "Okay," Hu Nyo said as she waved her trotter. The two exited the Black Tower. Hu Nyo held Ling Han's hand and walked, while Ling Han completely relaxed. Though he couldn't feel Hu Nyo's hand anymore, he believed in Hu Nyo and let her lead. In reality, he couldn't feel himself moving at all. Time and space had lost all meaning, and after an unknown amount of time, he suddenly discovered that a weak light appeared in front of him. He was stunned for a moment, then realized, "I can feel it." With his 5 senses restored, Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief. Ahead wasn't the entrance. Hu Nyo didn't lead him on a random walk, but a stone house with a milky white light. It was very weak, but very gentle. Ling Han walked in and looked around. This stone house was very simple. Strictly speaking, it was just a cave. Why was it called a stone house? That was because there was actually a stone statue erected in the center. This definitely wasn't formed naturally. The figure was extremely realistic, and every detail was clear. It was the appearance of an old man. Even if it was a stone statue, one could still feel his sage-like charm. So simple. Ling Han couldn't help but look disappointed. The source of 2 strange rivers, the cave that could make people lose their 5 senses, was actually such a simple stone house at the end. Even this stone house was naturally formed, without a trace of human effort, except for this stone statue. Strange, very strange. Who would put a stone statue in such a place? What, disappointed to see this lord? A voice suddenly sounded in Ling Han's mind. Ling Han was suddenly shocked. All his hair stood on end, and his scalp went numb. What the hell was this? He clearly didn't see anyone. Hey, Junior, where are you?" The voice sounded again. "Show yourself," Ling Han said sternly. He grabbed Hu Nyo with his right hand, ready to retreat into the Black Tower at any time. "Isn't this lord right in front of you?" Tisk. "A living person has a pair of eyes for nothing. Should this lord pluck them off?" The voice said. In front of him, Ling Han couldn't help but point at the stone statue. "This is you?" "This lord doesn't like being pointed at. Believe it or not, this lord will break your claws." The voice said again. Ling Han withdrew his hand in shock. He'd seen many strange things, and it wasn't strange for stones to have life, like rock spirits. But the one in front of him clearly didn't have the slightest bit of vitality. This definitely wasn't a rock spirit. Ling Han could conclude that this was an ordinary stone statue, but for some reason, it could actually emit divine sense. After knowing what was going on, Ling Han instead felt reassured, and said with a smile, "Senior, why don't you come out and let me see? If this lord could come out, would I waste words with you?" The voice said, seeming somewhat angry and helpless. Could it be that Senior has been trapped here? Ling Han's heart trembled. For example, the Azura Demon Emperor had been split into 9 parts, each of which had been suppressed in different parts of the vast lands. However, that didn't seem right. Although there was also fog here, it was purple fog, and the lightning and flames also didn't match the Azura Demon Emperor. Junior, since you can come here, we can be considered to be fated. How about this? You find a few treasures for this lord, and this lord will bestow you an exceptional mystical power. How about it? The voice tempted. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh, and said, Senior's skill in getting something with nothing is too profound. Just a few words and you want me to work hard for Senior? Damn brat, who knows how many people fight to lick the soles of this lord's shoes, and this lord doesn't even need to look at them. Now I'm even using an exceptional mystical power to exchange with you, and you're still not content? The voice snorted coldly. One of the stone statue's hands actually flashed with lightning. So terrifying. The power of this lightning had at least reached the high-level heaven tier, definitely surpassing Ling Han's current limit. Ling Han's heart thumped. He could conclude that there were two strange rivers outside, or at least that Lightning River was inextricably related to this mysterious existence. Chapter 758. Ling Han's thoughts turned quickly and he said, Dare I ask how I should address Senior? Lightning flashed on the stone statue, striking towards Ling Han. Junior, let me teach you a lesson first, to let you know that you should respect your seniors, the voice said. Ling Han raised his fist to meet it, activating the thunderclap ninth heaven, fighting lightning with lightning. The lightning overflowed, interweaving with dazzling light. Ling Han was sent flying, crashing heavily into the wall, and then bouncing back. It was very shocking. This was a heaven-tier attack, but the wall didn't leave a trace, which showed how sturdy it was. The voice sounded surprised. Junior, you're quite strange. You're obviously only in the deity transformation tier, but your battle prowess has reached the heaven tier, and your physique has also reached this level. This is very rare even here. Very rare. Ling Han's heart trembled. The meaning of rare was that there was someone who could also reach such heights. Who was this mysterious existence? At least the Earth Dragon sect specialized in physical arts, and Jia Ming was a genius that appeared once in 10,000 years, claiming to have the highest ancestral blood, but his physique was only comparable to rare metals of the same level, far from being comparable to Ling Han's. And this little girl? The voice paused slightly. She can actually bear the aftermath of the battle as if nothing happened, simply inconceivable, strange, a tiny mayfly world could actually produce such a genius. Senior, what's a mayfly world? Ling Han asked. Of course it's your incomparably tiny world, the voice said. This lord is Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. Remember this lord's name, that is the world's strongest. Ling Han sneered inwardly. You didn't escape here because you were crippled, or else you'd be suppressed, or else you'd still need me to find some treasure and brag about being the world's strongest. But his expression remained unchanged, and he said, So it's Senior Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. May I ask Senior, why is our place a mayfly world? There aren't even real stars, suns, and moons, so what is it if not a mayfly world? Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire sneered. All right, less nonsense, quickly go find treasure for this lord. As for this girl, stay, this lord wants to take her as a disciple. Pei, Nyo doesn't want it. Nyo made a face. I'm very powerful. No, I'm the most powerful. Take me as your master. You'll benefit greatly. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire sounded like he was trying to trick a child. Thunder, Fire. Ling Han understood in his heart that the river of lightning and the river of fire outside were both born because of the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. From this point of view, the other party was indeed very strong, at least able to rival the shattering void tier. Moreover, from his tone, he was obviously not someone from the lower realm. No wonder the almighty beings of the god realm were so arrogant. Locked here by someone, and can only rely on a broken stone statue to speak, how powerful can he be? Nyo said disdainfully. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was infuriated. His furious divine will interweaved, unable to calm down for a long time. After a long while, he said, "One day I will recover my strength. At that time, I will kill all the experts in the 9 heavens and make them bow down to me." Ling Han interrupted, "I wonder if Senior can tell us about the God Realm?" "God Realm? Ha!" The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire laughed loudly and sneered. "Why should I tell you? Young man, hand over these treasures, and I'll tell you everything you want to know." "A few questions and you want some treasures in exchange? Senior is too good at doing business, no deal." Ling Han refused at once, paused, and said, "However, there's no harm in listening to what treasures Senior needs." The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire was very displeased. A mere deity transformation tier junior dared to bargain with him, but who asked him to ask for help? He snorted and said, "I want these 4 things: true dragon's horn, heavenly phoenix's feather, high crimson blood, and purple peak divine gold. Pay." The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched. "Why don't you just rob? Which one of these 4 things isn't the world's top divine item? Most importantly, would there be such divine items in the lower realm? For example, true dragon's horn. Although Hellion Sun Shui was a descendant of a true dragon, she only possessed a sliver of bloodline, and was who knew how far away from a true dragon. Even the ruler of the 4 seas, the imperial family's Ao family, only had slightly more concentrated dragon blood, and was still miles away from a true dragon. None of the other 3 things were inferior. Not to mention that Ling Han was only in the deity transformation tier. Even a shattering void tier cultivator wouldn't be able to do anything about them. Firstly, they couldn't beat them, and secondly, they couldn't find them. Hee, I don't want you to find them immediately. You can't find them in this lousy place. However, when you go to the God Realm in the future, you'll have the chance to obtain them. I'll wait for you, the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire said. Nonsense, it seems like you can't leave like this. Can't you run out for a stroll? Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, "Then I wonder what kind of exceptional mystical power Senior will bestow upon me? If this mystical power was really awesome, then after he obtained those divine objects in the future, he could consider whether or not to do this business. I'll send you a divine sense now, and let you see the power of the mystical power," the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire said. Xiao, a small light that flew out from the stone statue, and stopped in front of Ling Han. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless, and carefully observed for a while. When he confirmed that it was indeed a memory scene, he extended a finger and pressed it. Wang, a battle scene immediately appeared in his consciousness. A person with an unclear appearance was in a fierce battle. His opponent was a person who used a sword, and the sword light was piercingly cold and extremely terrifying. His appearance was unclear because there was a layer of fog on his face, but Ling Han had a feeling that this was the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire, and not the person who used the sword. The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire suddenly showed his might, and 4 more arms actually grew out of his body, as if he had become an octopus. 6 arms simultaneously activated a secret art, and it was as if he had become 3 people. Ling Han was astonished. Although he had grasped many mystical powers and secret arts at the same time, at the very least, he couldn't use the annihilating dragon star arrow and earth overturning seal at the same time. However, if he could also have 4 more arms, then it would be completely different. With 6 arms spread out at the same time, he activated 5 secret arts at once, and instantly suppressed that swordsman. How is it? This is the immovable deity metal body great mystical power, and this is only the first tier. If you continue to cultivate it, your entire body can become bigger, and just the power of a swing will be able to destroy everything. The heavenly emperor of thunder and fire said in a tempting tone. This is an exceptional mystical power that I found in an ancient site after expending Herculean effort and almost dying. Do you want to learn it? If you do, then bring those 4 divine objects here, and this seat will teach you. Want to learn very much. Even if it was only the first tier, transforming into a body with 6 arms, it would still be extremely practical, and it would be able to release multiple mystical powers at the same time. This was too valuable. Ling Han nodded and said, "All right, I will work hard to find these 4 divine objects. However, Senior, My current strength is too weak. Can you first teach me some mystical arts so that I can have a little more confidence? Otherwise, if I die, it will be a loss to Senior, right? It was rare to encounter such a powerful existence, and it would be a waste not to take advantage of the benefits. Chapter 759. You're really evil. In the Black Tower, Shui Yinyu shook her head and sighed. Luo Yu and Luo Wu were both the core forces of the Luo clan, and Zhou Xiao, Fan Yong, and Lu Ying were also people who had lived for tens of thousands of years. However, all of them had been toyed around in the palm of Ling Han's hand. He had said that he wanted to force the murderer to reveal himself so that he could catch them, but in truth, he only wanted these people to fight among themselves. Meanwhile, he was enjoying the show from the other side, enjoying it with great relish. Then do you like it? Ling Han asked with a smile. Unfortunately, under the isolation of the dense fog, he similarly couldn't obtain anything from the Black Tower. This made him feel greatly regretful. I don't like it, Shui Yinyu hurriedly said. She was afraid that Ling Han would make a move on her again. This made her feel both happy and disgusted. Ling Han snickered and said, "Didn't they say that women love bad men?" Twisted theory. Shui Yinyu criticized. She definitely wouldn't like a bad man. Otherwise, how could she have fallen out with Zhao Lun? It's about time to go out, Ling Han said. He could already feel sunlight shining down on them again. Xiao, the two of them exited the Black Tower. With the isolation of the dense fog, it was really impossible for anyone to discover that they had disappeared for a period of time. Now, they had suddenly appeared again. The sun shone, and light returned. Everyone felt as if they had returned to the mortal world from a gloomy hell. The feeling of losing their eyesight and divine sense was really too terrible. Gasp. However, everyone was immediately stunned because there were 7 more corpses on the deck. They were lined up neatly, and they just happened to be the remaining members of the Black Five gang. The way each of them had died was exactly the same. They had all been stabbed in the chest, and it was a fatal blow. Who had done this? Everyone's eyes involuntarily turned to Ling Han. He was the one who had suggested to re-enter the dense fog, so he was naturally the most suspicious. Ling Han, what else do you have to say this time? Luo Yu immediately shouted. There's naturally nothing to say to a stupid bird like you, Ling Han said with a smile. My idea was not bad, right? The murderer has appeared again. However, everyone didn't work together. Otherwise, with so many elites at the consummate level of the mountain river tier standing guard, how could the murderer have calmly retreated after killing them? Luo Wu pointed at Ling Han and said, You're lying. It was clearly you who did this. Ling Han shook his head and said, Everyone, let's be honest. Just then, everyone was attacking me, so how could I have had the time to assassinate others? Moreover, I've killed as many as 7 of them. Don't slander me, Fan Yong said calmly. That's right, don't spout nonsense. Luo Yu immediately denied it. Attacking a disciple of the Scarlet Heaven Academy? If news of this spread, it wouldn't be a good thing. Yang Tiecheng's thick brows furrowed into a Jeech character. He was naturally aware that the situation had been so chaotic just then, and it was indeed because everyone had been attacking Ling Han. In such a chaotic situation, Ling Han still had the time to kill people. Moreover, he had killed as many as 7 people. He couldn't believe it. But on the other hand, Ling Han was indeed the most suspicious. He was the one who had suggested to re-enter the dense fog, and he had a grudge with the Black Five gang. All the evidence pointed to Ling Han. Why don't we return to the dense fog again? However, we have to tie this person up this time, Luo Yu said as she pointed at Ling Han. Good idea. Fan Yong immediately clapped his hands in approval. Hee, Ling Han, didn't you say that you are innocent? Then tie yourself up. If someone still dies after leaving the dense fog, that will prove that you are not the murderer, Luo Wu said. Ling Han scoffed and said, Are you all idiots? If the murderer doesn't move, then wouldn't I be tortured into a confession? Moreover, you all are looking at me so unkindly, so how would I dare to tie myself up and become a living target for you all? Brother Yang, you are the owner of this ship, so what do you think we should do? Luo Yu threw the question to Yang Taicheng. Yang Taichung pondered for a long while before saying, Ling Han, come over here. I will ensure your safety. What he meant by saying these words was that he agreed with Luo Yu and the others' suggestion. They would return to the dense fog after restraining Ling Han. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, All right, I trust Lord Yang. He nodded at Shui Yinyu, and the two of them walked to Yang Taichung's side. Yang Taichung retrieved 2 sets of shackles, and said, These were forged from level 4 godly metal, and there are also 3 divine patterns on them. If they are locked, even cultivators at the consummate level of the mountain river tier will not be able to break free. Everyone nodded. These shackles were specially used to restrain elites. They were only forged from level 4 godly metal, and there were also level 6, level 7, and level 8 shackles that could even restrain elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Those 3 divine patterns would restrict the power of cultivators, and once they were shackled, they would be no different from a cripple. He's dead for sure now. Luo Yu and the others all said in their minds. They did not care whether Ling Han was the culprit or not, and merely wanted to use this opportunity to kill Ling Han. In front of everyone, Yang Taichung handcuffed Ling Han, and at the same time said, Don't worry, as long as I am alive, I will definitely guarantee your safety. Ling Han did not believe this in the slightest. Yang Taichung was indeed very strong, but the people here were not weak either. Luo Yu, Lu Ying, and the other 3 women were all at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and if the 5 of them attacked together, how could they not be able to stop Yang Taichung? As long as they could restrain Yang Taichung, even if it was only for 1 or 2 moves, the remaining people would naturally be able to kill Ling Han as easily as blowing off dust. Ling Han was willing to agree because he had the Black Tower. Lads, come over here and form a circle around these 2 people. Even if you die, you are not allowed to move, Yang Taichung suddenly shouted. Yes, the 20 or so sailors answered in unison and formed 2 circles in front of Ling Han and Shui Yinyu. Humph, they are only trash in the low extreme of the mountain river tier. What use could they be? Luo Yu and the others all thought. The gap between each cultivation level of the immortal level was too large. Even a subminor level could form a crushing advantage. What more when there was a difference of 2 or 3 minor levels? Even the legendary 5-star geniuses could only die with a grievance. The ship once again turned around and sailed back into the black fog. Everyone became silent again. The bow of the ship slowly sailed into the black fog, and when the last ray of light disappeared, a great battle suddenly erupted. Ding ding ding, pern, pern pit. Everyone attacked without any reservations. Saber light and sword shadows surged and power surged. Yang Taichung roared again and again. He turned into a wall and was going to block all the people who were charging over. He was at the consummate level of the mountain river tier, and he had already reached the pinnacle of the peak stage. There was already no more room for improvement unless he advanced to the Sun-Moon tier. After a few thousand years of tempering, his battle prowess had become incredibly fierce and domineering. When he punched out with his iron fists, their might was not the slightest bit weaker than the impact of godly metal of the same level. Moreover, he was also a 2-star genius, so his battle prowess was truly frightening. However, the problem was that there were far too many people attacking him. Moreover, none of them had any intention of fighting to the death with him. They only wanted to charge past the wall that he was. In this way, it was naturally much more difficult for him. If he wanted to block everyone, that would be an impossible task. A crew member screamed in agony as he collapsed to the ground, groaning in pain. You dare! Yang Taichung was furious. His 3-meter-tall body exuded a black metallic luster. He was finally serious and used a powerful move. Chapter 760. He summoned Zhu Xian Air, Rabbit, and Gold-Seeking Rat from the Black Tower, and the group began to head back. They still had another mission on this trip, and that was to beat all the great sects of the North region into submission. At that time, once the Great Ling Empire's army arrived, they would be able to directly take over their territories. Moreover, the influence of these great sects was enormous, and they could even mobilize the small forces in the surroundings to surrender together, greatly accelerating the expansion of the Great Ling Empire. As the saying goes, capture the ringleader first. This was the wisdom of the ancestors. Along the way, Ling Han tried to figure out the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation. This was a Tier 10 array formation. In theory, it should not be something that Ling Han could grasp right now. But it must be known that Ling Han had previously been studying the formation on the Revere Life Sword. This killing formation was even more awesome than the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation. He was a smart and intelligent person. In his previous life, he had cracked many 9th tier arrays and had a good foundation. Now that he had the detailed explanation of a 10th tier array, his improvement was naturally fast. On the other hand, he was still collecting all kinds of rare metals. Along the way, he bought all the rare metals that could be bought. Do not doubt his financial resources. This was a tycoon who owned the Black Tower. If he took out a dragon blood tyrant ginseng, perhaps even a large spiritual infant tier sect would have to fork out all their assets for it. Ling Han naturally wouldn't sell the dragon blood tyrant ginseng, but how many treasured medicines were there in the Black Tower? He refined some pills, and if he didn't have enough time, he would directly sell the raw materials, exchanging them for large amounts of wealth, which were all turned into precious metals. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han took out the Heaven Transformation Bowl and purified these rare metals. Tier 1 became Tier 2, Tier 2 became Tier 3, and Tier 3 became Tier 4. He didn't believe that he couldn't smash out a pile of Tier 10 rare metals to construct a Tier 10 array formation. Very quickly, the Sunluo sect chose to submit, followed by the Beast Emperor sect. In the end, only the Blood Flame Valley remained. After spending an astonishing amount of wealth, Ling Han finally refined enough 10th tier rare metals. He reckoned that at least half of the rare metals in the entire North region had been swept away by him. This was something that even the Half Moon sect, Winter Moon sect, and other super forces did not dare to imagine, but Ling Han had done it. The Alchemy Emperor and the Black Tower. With the combination of the two, money was a small matter. Of course, without the Heavenly Transformation Bowl, everything would be for naught. This treasure is truly heaven-defying. Ling Han forged 108 short swords out of 10th tier rare metal. In reality, he really wanted to forge them into normal sizes, but there was still too little rare metal, so he could only settle for the next best thing. The number of 108 was chosen because the requirement of the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation was that many formation cores were needed. Inside the Black Tower, it was really too easy for Ling Han to refine tools. The so-called 10th tier rare metal was no different from dough paste that he could knead as he pleased. The next step was the key, which was to carve the runes on it. Ling Han had yet to fully comprehend the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation. If he were to forcefully draw it, he would only be able to draw its form and not obtain its soul. However, the array formation needed to communicate with the heaven and earth in order to attract spiritual chi. Otherwise, it would just be an empty shell. Therefore, Ling Han could only wait. When he truly grasped the essence of the array formation, he would be able to set up the array formation. He believed that it wouldn't take too long. Ling Han was full of confidence in himself. The group rushed towards the Blood Flame Valley. It was obviously not difficult to subdue a mere spiritual infant tier force, but it was a bit of a hassle to travel. After all, the North region wasn't small. Because they were constantly on the road, there was little time to rest and eat. Hunyo refused and strongly requested to stop and rest. Ling Han thought that they should arrive at the Blood Flame Valley tomorrow, and one night's time wouldn't matter, so he agreed. There was naturally good wine and food prepared. In the North region, everyone was very relaxed. After all, their group could proclaim themselves as kings here and were invincible existences. The bonfire blazed, and Zhu Xian Air especially played the flute and danced a song, causing Ling Han's mind to ripple. A stunner was a stunner, and could make him want to turn into a beast at any moment. Hunyo refused to accept it, and also started to dance, causing the ground to rumble, scaring the nearby wild beasts into jumping up and down. Ling Han laughed loudly, feeling joyful and harmonious. In this kind of harmonious atmosphere, he had even forgotten that he wanted to contend for hegemony over the world. He only wanted to continue living peacefully like this. As for the important matter of splitting open the skies, he could just leave it to others to do. Why did he have to shoulder the burden of such a task? At this moment, a terrifying gust of wind blasted over, directly attacking Ling Han's back. The timing of this sneak attack was extremely good. Not only was it when Ling Han was eating, but it was also when his mood was the most relaxed. The destructive power of this attack was also extremely terrifying, reaching the level of the middle stage of the heaven tier. Ling Han's body turned into lightning, dodging this attack by a hair's breadth. No, he didn't manage to dodge it completely. His left rib was still hit. The cloth was torn apart, revealing a black mark on his waist. It seemed to have been scratched by 5 fingers. Not only was it frighteningly black, but it also gave off a faint, fishy smell. It was very likely that it contained poisonous gas. "Who?" the others shouted fiercely, and Hunyo was even more direct. Her small figure charged out and disappeared into the underbrush. Pung, 2 figures fought. One was naturally Hunyo, and it was obvious from her small figure. The other person was tall and wore a black robe with a black cloak over his head. It was as if he could blend in with the darkness. This was not an illusion. Otherwise, with Ling Han's and Hunyo's divine sense, it was absolutely impossible for someone to be so close to them and not be aware of it, unless the other party was in the Shattering Void tier. However, it was obvious that this was not an elite of the Shattering Void tier. Would a Shattering Void tier cultivator still need to launch a sneak attack? He could directly take them away with a single move. Ling Han called Hunyo back and said, "You must have followed us for a long time, right?" 9 whole days. The black-robed man said with a calm tone, appearing unhurried. His voice was very low, and there was an indescribable strangeness to it, as if metal was rubbing against each other. "Very patient," Ling Han said. This person obviously wanted to assassinate him long ago, but had been enduring, looking for the best opportunity. In the end, he finally defended, lightly wounding Ling Han with a single strike. "How should I address you?" The black-robed man took off the cloak covering his head, revealing a squarish face that looked very young. However, Ling Han had a strange feeling that the other party should be very old, because there were deep wrinkles on his exposed arm. "I'm called Corpse 2, the black-robed man said. "Corpse 2, what kind of name was that? From the 1,000 Corpse sect?" Ling Han asked again. Corpse 2 laughed and said, "This name is too bad. Once it's said, people will guess it." "Then you can change it." Ling Han also laughed. "Forget it, I don't mind being known," Corpse 2 said indifferently. From the two's harmonious conversation, who would have thought that Corpse 2 mercilessly ambushed Ling Han just now, wanting to kill him? Chapter 761. This cloak has the effect of concealment, right? Ling Han said. Corpse 2 nodded and said, "That's right, this is a secret treasure. Within a certain distance, it can conceal divine sense and isolate vision. It's a divine item for assassination and infiltration." "Thank you for dispelling my doubts," Ling Han said with a smile. "You're welcome. You're a man about to die anyway, and I usually give a certain amount of respect to those who die in my hands," Corpse 2 also said with a smile. "Since there's a Corpse 2, is there a Corpse 1? Ling Han asked again. Corpse 2 shook his head and said, "There's no Corpse 1, but there's one called Corpse Boss, who awakened a step earlier than me and developed intelligence." Ling Han's heart instantly beat wildly. Awakened a step earlier and developed intelligence. What did this mean? Could it be that Corpse 2 wasn't born, but like the rock spirit, his body existed for countless years, and then suddenly developed intelligence and developed a special life? Corpse 2 cracked a smile, but it was so funny that it was very stiff, making people feel strange just by looking at it. He said, "You guessed correctly, I was originally a corpse. I don't know which elite I was in my previous life, but my corpse didn't decay after tens of thousands of years, and finally obtained the bell spirit of heaven and earth, developing intelligence again." Ling Han couldn't help but have a solemn expression. No wonder he felt this person was very old and very young, extremely contradictory. It turned out that a new soul was born on an old corpse, a miraculous life bestowed by the heavens. It was a combination of life and death, so it was naturally young and old. In that case, Corpse Boss is also like this? Corpse 2 nodded and said, "That's right, Corpse Boss is stronger than me, because his corpse is better. However, after developing a second life, I can cultivate a new, and in the future, I won't lose to him." Damn, what a freak. This was an old corpse coming back to life, and who knew how shocking his battle prowess would be? Would he be able to use the secret techniques from his previous life? One had to know that the owner of this body could actually keep the corpse from decaying for tens of thousands of years, so he was definitely an incredibly powerful being when he was alive. The will of martial art must have been fused into every piece of flesh and bone. Now that his body was not damaged, the will of martial art might even be reactivated. How could this not be shocking? The Thousand Corpse sect really thinks highly of me, sending such a big shot to kill me, Ling Han said. The opponent's strength was at least 5 stars of heaven tier, and he believed that such strength could be called an elite among elites in the Thousand Corpse sect. There were definitely not many who were stronger than him. Corpse 2 laughed heartily and said, "Who asked you to seek your own death and establish a dynasty? This is something our sect absolutely won't allow." A thought struck Ling Han, and he said, "Could it be that the Thousand Corpse sect also has plans to establish a nation?" Our sect's goal is to establish an enormous corpse nation. This isn't a secret," Corpse 2 said indifferently. Ling Han seemed to have caught on to something, and said, "Could it be that the Thousand Corpse sect is also?" He made a gesture of splitting open the sky. "Interested?" Corpse 2 grinned, and said, "That's right, but it's slightly different from what you think." Splitting open the sky was to bring the entire vast lands into the divine realm, raising the level of the vast lands as a whole and turning it into divine land. Wait, Ling Han was startled inwardly. Since someone cultivated a netherworld art and could break open another layer of the void to enter the netherworld, then which realm would the person who cultivated a netherworld art ascend to when splitting open the sky? The netherworld, the Thousand Corpse sect was also a great dream. However, with the strength that the Thousand Corpse sect had displayed so far, did they have such strength? It wasn't that Ling Han looked down on them, but the difference was truly quite far. Probably, any random one of the 5 great sects could sweep them clean. Otherwise, why would the Thousand Corpse sect be a coward for so many years? Corpse 2 was neither fast nor slow, as if he wasn't here to be an assassin at all. He said unhurriedly, "I know you're stalling for time, but so am I. You've been poisoned by my corpse poison, and it's impossible to expel it. It'll only become more and more serious. As I said, I'm quite respectful to the dead." Ling Han looked down, and saw that the black wound on his waist was expanding as expected, almost turning his entire waist black. Zhu Xian immediately cried out in shock. Being wounded by someone from the Thousand Corpse sect, there couldn't possibly be a good outcome, either dying or becoming a corpse soldier. Ling Han nodded and said, "As expected of a 10,000-year-old corpse demon, my body of diamond actually can't expel such corpse poison automatically." He circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, and Wang, golden light immediately flickered all over his body, making him seem like an awe-inspiring god of war. Corpse 2 put his hands behind his back, appearing indifferent and having no intention of stopping him at all. He said indifferently, "You're right, I'm indeed a 10,000-year-old corpse, at least this body is, and not just 10,000-year-old, but at least a few 100,000 years." He seemed to have suddenly become interested in talking and said, "You know, corpses are like trees and have corpse wheels. The corpse wheels on my body are at least 300,000. Sorry, I don't have the leisure to count them clearly." In terms of age, this was probably the oldest generation in the vast lands, and even people like Ma Duo Bao, who'd slept for 100 or 200,000 years, couldn't compare. For 300,000 years, my body has always been placed in a place of extinguishing yang and extreme yin, and the density of the corpse chi it formed is beyond imagination. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to nurture a new divine sense, and could only become a corpse soldier. Ling Han's whole body was enveloped in golden light, and he said, "Then why do you need to rely on the Thousand Corpse sect? You could be free and unrestrained, and run amok between heaven and earth. People always have some dreams, and my dream is the same as the Thousand Corpse sects, so we're obviously like-minded. Besides, Corpse 2 broke into a smile. This is a corpse of mine, and also needs corpse chi to increase cultivation, so if I don't join the 1,000 corpse sect, where can I go? The golden light faded, and Ling Han shook his head, and said, a 10,000-year-old corpse is powerful as expected, I can't expel such corpse poison. It wasn't that the indestructible heaven scroll wasn't powerful enough, but rather that this old corpse had been buried for over 300,000 years, and the corpse poison had expired for too long. Most likely, even a shattering void tier elite might not be able to withstand it. Moreover, Ling Han's cultivation level was also slightly lower. If his cultivation level was the same as his opponent's, then there would definitely be room for him to use the indestructible heaven scroll. At this moment, the corpse poison had already crawled up to Ling Han's chest. Corpse 2 was slightly surprised and said, your strength isn't bad, and your cultivation method is even better, being able to control the spread of the corpse poison so slowly. If it were someone else in the divine transformation realm, even 1,000 of them would have become corpse soldiers. Sigh, I really can't bear to kill such a genius. Although corpse soldiers are powerful, they don't have intelligence after all. No matter how powerful they are, there's still a limit. He seemed very emotional. Since you've already said so, how could I possibly disappoint you? Ling Han smiled, and his figure flashed again and again. He was even faster than the blink of an eye, yet the corpse poison on his body had completely dissipated. His skin was bright and clean like warm jade. It emitted divine light and was untainted by dust. Corpse 2's expression couldn't help but change. How was this possible? Chapter 762. Corpse 2 frowned and said, just now, your body flashed and left my divine sense for a split second. It must be because of that you dispelled the corpse poison. Ling Han nodded and said, that's right. What method did you use exactly? Corpse 2 seemed very curious. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, since you explained so much for me, then I'll also answer you. I have a treasure that dispels corpse poison or something, a piece of cake. Fucking nonsense. Corpse 2 said inwardly. He obviously knew that with Ling Han's strength, he couldn't dispel the corpse poison, and even any medicinal pill in this world couldn't do it. Because his predecessor was the strongest existence in the world, and the corpse poison formed after 300,000 years surpassed any existing spirit medicine in terms of age. It was like a heaven tier elite facing a shattering void tier elite. There was no solution. At most, it would slow down the corpse poison's attack a bit, just like Ling Han before. But now, the corpse poison was actually dispelled, which he couldn't understand or accept. How could this be? What treasure was that, to actually be able to dispel 300,000 years of corpse poison? Ling Han clenched his fists and said, okay, the wrangling is over. You won't tell me the 1,000 corpse sect's secret, and I won't tell you my trump card. Obviously, there's nothing to say, and we can only see the truth with our fists. Corpse 2 smiled faintly and said, when I kill you and turn you into a corpse soldier, I'll make you spit out all your secrets. You know, when one just becomes a corpse soldier, the memories are still there, but they'll quickly disappear. He seemed like a scholar, and not a vicious corpse reincarnated. Ling Han shook his head, and said, you don't have this chance. He had too many trump cards. Even if the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation couldn't operate, the Black Tower's power boost made his battle prowess soar to the shattering void tier, and he could eliminate heaven tier elites with a raise of his hand. But he didn't want to use up this power boost opportunity now. It had to be used at the most crucial moment. Corpse 2 also clenched his fists and said, then let's see the truth with our fists. Ling Han gave a long howl, and took the initiative to attack. Just now, he was ambushed, and if it weren't for the existence of the Black Tower, he would definitely have become a corpse soldier. This caused him to be both shocked and furious. In the future, no matter what situation he was in, he could not relax and be careless. He had taken a trip to the gates of hell, so he naturally had a belly full of anger. Just as he said, after wrangling with each other and knowing what they needed to know, the next step was naturally the battle. Corpse 2 was fearless and raised his fist to meet the attack. In the beginning, they fought very cautiously. No one dared to advance rashly before they figured out the other's true strength. But as they fought, they gradually increased their battle prowess. Ling Han's hands clasped together, and golden light instantly spread out. He activated the earth-overturning seal. With his current origin power and brute force, in addition to the earth-overturning seal, his battle prowess naturally soared to the heaven tier. You're really amazing to be able to break through the realm barrier at the deity transformation realm. Although Corpse 2's attacks were as powerful as a mountain, there was no expression on his face from beginning to end. It seemed that he wasn't good at controlling the muscles on his face. After all, he was reborn as a corpse. How else would I behead you? Ling Han said with a smile. Behead me? Corpse 2 laughed loudly. Where do you get such confidence from? Fine, I'll let you see my true battle prowess. He snorted, and a few bone spikes actually grew out of his fists. Ling Han's heart instantly shivered. He was definitely pierced by these bone spikes earlier, and that was why he was infected with corpse poison. He couldn't be underestimated. He wrapped origin power in his hands and activated the earth-overturning seal. Golden light covered the sky, and the Eye of Truth activated. His battle prowess rose a bit again, reaching 2 stars of heaven tier. However, it was incredibly difficult to cross a large realm, and even if he activated an additional mystical power, his battle prowess would only rise by 1 star. Corpse 2's fists were like rain, and he didn't mind fighting in close combat with Ling Han. He indeed had this kind of confidence. The corpse hadn't deteriorated for 300,000 years, and this wasn't just because it was in a place of extreme yin and yang extinguishing, but also because it had definitely been a body cultivator when it was alive. Only then could the corpse withstand the corrosion of tens of thousands of years. Thus, his physique was tyrannical, and he obviously wasn't afraid of close combat at all. Ling Han fought head-on with the opponent for so long, and already knew that the opponent's physique was even more tyrannical than his. Shattering Void Tier. This was even more cheating than Ling Han, because the opponent had cultivated his physique to this level in his previous life. In this life, Corpse 2 developed intelligence, and even if he only had body refining tier cultivation, his physique was out-and-out shattering void tier. Of course, this was also restricted, and couldn't be improved further unless Corpse 2 advanced into the shattering void tier and had a fortuitous encounter to further improve his physique. However, this was easier said than done. At least, apart from the indestructible Heaven Scroll, he'd never heard of any cultivation technique that could achieve this. Ling Han quietly activated the demonic patterns. Aren't you awesome? Then have a taste of this. The earth-overturning seal blasted onto the corpse's fist, and the protruding bone spike actually collapsed, though it was only one. Corpse 2 couldn't help but be surprised. This bone spike was derived, and obviously couldn't compare to his physique in terms of toughness, but it was actually destroyed in one blow. This was still a bit hard for him to accept. He stared at Ling Han's left hand, and a black light actually flickered in his eyes. After a while, he frowned and said, "Power of regulation? How is this possible? You're only in the deity transformation tier. How can you cultivate the power of regulation? You actually know about the power of regulation?" Ling Han tried to fish out the other party's words. That Sundra Tower always spoke only half of what he said, making him unclear and unclear. Corpse 2 snorted and said, "After reaching the 9th layer of the shattering void tier, one is qualified to touch the power of regulation. Could it be that you're the reincarnation of the shattering void tier? So that's how it is." Ling Han said inwardly, but his face didn't change, lest the other party think that he was purely pretending to understand and trying to fish out the other party's words. He smiled and said, "You were so awesome in your previous life, couldn't you use the power of regulation?" Corpse 2 was very gloomy. He only inherited this body's toughness and couldn't possibly possess his predecessor's martial art willpower, or else he wouldn't be the strongest in the world right from birth, almost without a rival. He still had to walk the martial art tier step by step, and climb to the heaven tier in 20 years. This was already an inconceivable miracle, built on the toughness of his body and merely walking the old path again. There definitely wasn't the slightest bottleneck, and he could cultivate every tier to perfection. However, he needed to reach the Shattering Void tier and advance into the 9th layer to be qualified to cultivate the power of regulation again. This had nothing to do with the body, and was related to the understanding of natural law. That was why he guessed that Ling Han was the reincarnation of the Shattering Void tier, or else how could he grasp the power of regulation? So you can't? Ling Han laughed loudly, and instantly attacked like a tide. This power of regulation could actually only be used by the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. Now he was awesome. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 763. When martial artists fought, they usually used their hands, feet, or weapons. Only an extremely small number of people would cultivate strange techniques like the Iron Head technique. However, if one were to use their mouth as a weapon, apart from Hunyo, it would probably be this young man. Fu Tian's battle style was practically a copy of Hunyo's, but his performance was even crueler. His hands were like they were forged from metal and could easily tear apart the opponent's defenses, rip open their stomachs, and bite their throats. In any case, as long as he could injure or kill the enemy, it was fine. This was the result of countless battles. This person must have experienced countless battles like this, and it had already become second nature to him. Once he started fighting, his body would naturally move like this. Where on earth did this young man come from? Bullshit. The pirates could no longer hold on. Previously, 60 people had boarded the ship, and now there were actually less than 20 still alive. Their losses could be said to be incomparably heavy. More importantly, they were still unable to take down this ship. Not a single one will be able to escape. Yang Taiching humphed coldly. He unleashed his full battle prowess and continuously killed from the bow to the stern, from the left to the right, not allowing any pirate a chance to escape. Just at this moment, the hull of the ship suddenly shook and almost flipped over. The people on the ship all staggered and all stopped fighting. What was going on? Not good. Yang Taiching and the other pirates looked into the distance, and expressions of shock appeared on their faces at the same time. Something that could cause fear to appear on their faces meant that they had encountered an incredible crisis. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, and also looked into the distance. He saw that at least 100 or so giant snakes were currently swimming over. Each of them was over 30 meters long, and their bodies were as thick as a well. There were green spots all over their bodies. Green-spotted demonic snakes, a crew member exclaimed in shock. These were special demonic beasts of the Star Sea, and they had evolved from demonic snakes. They were demonic beasts that lived in groups, and there would be at least a few hundred adult demonic snakes at the Mountain River tier in a single nest. Small ships could only flee if they encountered these demonic snakes. The hull of the ship shook again, and actually tilted to the left, about to capsize. Humph! Yang Taiching leaped up and stomped down on the right side of the hull. The hull of the ship shook violently, and the momentum of its capsizing was instantly stopped. Then it flipped back. There was an 80% chance that there was a giant snake at the bottom of the ship, and it was about to capsize the ship. Once they entered into the water, the power of cultivators would be greatly reduced. Demonic beasts that had reached the immortal level had completely developed intelligence, and could even take human form. Thus, they naturally knew how to maximize their own advantages. Ling Han's eyes swept over the area, and he saw that they had already been surrounded by a horde of demonic snakes. All around them were giant snakes that were over 30 meters long, and each of them was at the Mountain River tier. However, he couldn't be sure of their exact cultivation level. There were also some small snakes that were no more than 3 meters long, and were quite far behind. They were only at the Shattering Void tier or Heaven tier. Obviously, they didn't have the right to participate in the battle. They would have to wait until the giant snakes had finished their battle before they could come up and devour the flesh and blood of the cultivators. Spiritual flesh and blood were extremely nutritious for cultivators, but the blood essence of cultivators was similarly good stuff for demonic beasts. Especially immortal level cultivators, which were too nutritious for demonic beasts of the Shattering Void tier. This horde of demonic snakes should have smelled the scent of blood in the seawater, which was why they had come out in full force to feast. The situation suddenly became incredibly grim. The hull of the ship was still swaying. The demonic snake below was obviously unwilling to give up and insisted on capsizing the ship. This time, everyone didn't dare to fight amongst themselves anymore. They all stood at various corners of the ship and made their moves one after another to maintain the stability of the ship. If the ship were to capsize, it would be difficult for everyone to escape death. Ping pong 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 pit. The hull of the ship shook violently, and it was as if a gong was being struck. Not good, these demonic snakes are going to destroy the hull of the ship. Everyone's expression changed. If someone dove into the water at this moment, they would see that there were over a dozen large snakes swimming under the hull of the ship, and they were spitting water bombs at the bottom of the ship. These water bombs would explode the moment they came into contact with the bottom of the ship, causing the hull of the ship to shake violently. Below the ship, there was a gigantic demonic snake that was 300 meters long. The stripes on its body were a faint silver color. This was the demonic snake king, and its cultivation level had reached the peak stage of the mountain river tier. In fact, there was even a possibility that it could break through to the sun-moon tier. Thus, its stripes had also changed. It was the demonic snake king that had been pushing against the hull of the ship just now, wanting to capsize it. The hull of the ship shook violently, and it was as if a huge wave had appeared on the surface of the sea. Those below the immortal level would definitely be swaying from the shaking, and would have long since fallen into the sea from the deck. However, Ling Han and the others were stuck tightly to the ship like magnets. No matter how much the ship shook, it wouldn't budge in the slightest. However, everyone's expression became even more solemn. This was because they all knew that this ship wouldn't be able to hold on for too long under such crazy attacks. We've wasted a lot of time here. If we can hold on for another 2 days, the next ship will arrive. It's a large ship, and there's a great elite of the Sun-Moon tier on board, Yang Taiching encouraged everyone. If there was a Sun-Moon tier on board, then putting aside the fact that there were only a few hundred demonic snakes here, even if there were thousands or tens of thousands of them, they would still be slaughtered. The question was, could they hold on for so long as 2 days? The ship is about to break, Fu Tian suddenly said. However, there wasn't a shred of fear on his face. Instead, it was filled with fighting spirit. He was definitely a battle maniac. True enough, a crisp sound rang out from the hull of the ship. That was the sound of the keel cracking. Everyone looked at each other, but before they could say anything, there was a loud boom, and the whole ship suddenly disintegrated into at least a dozen pieces. Step on the deck of the ship. Otherwise, we'll lose our buoyancy, and we'll definitely die if we fight in the water. Yang Taiching shouted loudly. He was the captain, and he had to be responsible for all the crew members and guests. Everyone did as he said, and stood on different pieces of the hull. The pirates also stopped fighting. The 20 or so people were scattered on the 3 pieces of the hull. As for the small boat that they had ferried here, it had long since been crushed into pieces by the demonic snake and could no longer be used. Boom, a large snake burst out of the water, and with a sweep of its thick and powerful tail, swept toward a person on a piece of the hull. Very coincidentally, Ling Han was on this piece of hull. Thankfully, not only was Ling Han on this piece of hull, but Yang Taichung was also on it. Scram! He clenched his fist and smashed it into the snake's tail. Pung! The snake's tail actually exploded and turned into a rain of blood that filled the sky. The huge snake was also in so much pain that it continuously writhed on the surface of the sea, causing angry waves to rise. As expected of Yang Taichung, he was so strong. Wife, come over a bit. Ling Han wielded the sword in his right hand, while his left hand wrapped around Shui Yenyu's slender waist, and said, "Today, it is possible that we will become a pair of mandarin ducks that will share the same fate. You still haven't said a single word about love, so you won't let me die with regret, right?" Shui Yenyu rolled her eyes. This guy was too good at pretending. He clearly had the Black Tower, so even if everyone here died, the two of them would still be able to live on well. Chapter 764. Corpse 2 left. Ling Han didn't stop him. His opponent's physique was comparable to 10th tier rare metal, and even if he used the Revere Life Sword Strike, It would still take him a very long time to slash it open. However, his opponent wasn't a dead person, so would he allow him to slash it? A sense of urgency rose in him. He'd thought that with Purple Moon Empire's attack, the 5 great sects and the Thousand Corpse sect would be pinned down in the middle state, and wouldn't care about small places like the north, south, east, and west regions. He'd never thought that the Thousand Corpse sect would be the first to attack. Fortunately, they only sent out a heaven-tier elite. The pace of unification had to be even faster, so that everything under the heavens belonged to the king. Then, no matter where he fought, it would be his home ground, and he would be able to receive the power of the nation's enhancement. Moreover, the larger the territory and the more citizens there were, the stronger the enhancement of luck he would receive. In addition, he also had to quickly master the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation. This was a Tier 10 killing formation, and it was precisely the combat power that he urgently needed right now. After making a trip to the Blood Flame Valley and killing a few stubborn people who didn't listen to his advice, Ling Han had also become ruthless. He definitely wouldn't care about the dissatisfaction of a few people. Is the world more important, or is it more important to satisfy a few people's desire for power? As the Winter Moon sect and the other great sects surrendered one after another, the unification of the North region also became smooth. Wherever the great army passed, white flags would be raised. A heaven-grade alchemist, heaven-tier battle prowess. The two added together was an invincible trump card. Ling Han was on his way back. After a short rest and reorganization, he was going to lead his army westward. He would first attack the western region, then the southern region, and finally the eastern region to complete the unification of the outer regions. And the battle in the middle state would be the Purple Moon Empire and Ma Duobao. The 8 kings were very strong, but the 5 major sects of this generation were also very strong. The 8 kings might not be able to compete. And the Lunar King had said that the 8 kings added up wouldn't even be enough to defeat Ma Duobao alone. She really didn't know how strong this damn fatty was. Hellion Xuanxue had moved the capital to Cold Wind City in the northern region. She had chosen this place because of its geographical location. It happened to be in the middle of the northern region, which made it convenient to dispatch troops. Another reason was that Cold Wind City had the word Han in it. Ling Han was currently heading towards Cold Wind City. 7 days later, the party arrived at the imperial capital. Hellion Xuanxue was indeed skilled in governing a country. Not much time had passed, and the imperial capital already possessed a grand atmosphere, possessing the might of a ruler. More importantly, it was the will of the people. Everywhere, people were discussing the new policies of the Great Ling Empire, and everyone was full of praise. If he truly thought for the people would naturally repay him with sincerity. The common people are very simple. If you let them live a good life, they will support you. As a monarch, and not a heaven-grade alchemist or a high-level martial artist, Ling Han had finally left a deep impression in the hearts of ordinary people. He was pleased with this change and deliberately slowed down his pace, walking slowly. Damn it, you dare to snatch this young master's woman? Do you know who this young master is? When they passed by a place, they suddenly heard an arrogant voice. Why does that sound so familiar? Ling Han couldn't help but stop in his tracks. This voice, this tone, it was obvious that he was a good-for-nothing, but why did it sound so familiar? Could it be that he knew this kind of person? Zhu Xian'er, however, blushed and said, "This is my younger brother." "Oh right, Zhu Long Star." Ling Han couldn't help but reveal a smile, and said, "Then let's go in." No matter what, he was Zhu Xian'er's relative, and since he'd encountered him, then he'd go in. He raised his head and shook his head. Spring full floor. This was a place that made men ecstatic. A pimp came up to greet them and just wanted to express a warm welcome, but when it came to Ling Han's group, it was too fuck you abnormal. There was a big man, and then there was a fairy so beautiful that she was bubbling, a little girl carved from jade, and a rabbit. What kind of combination was this? The gold-seeking rat scuttled over and scratched at the pimp's face. "Who told you to ignore me? Who told you to ignore me?" Ling Han caught the gold-seeking rat back, threw over an ingot of gold, pointed at the second floor and said, "What's going on over there?" The pimp was still in a panic. What kind of large rat was that? Although it was chubby and made people immediately think of hot pot, its claws were a bit too fierce, causing him to scratch his skin, but with Ling Han's reward, his anger instantly turned into joy, and he said, "Sirs, that's two guests fighting over a woman's affections." Very simple, the two young masters were both on the same prostitute, asking for the other's first time by name. This was troublesome, as the first time was the only one. Thus, the two young masters fought. First, it was to see who had more money, and now it had risen to competing with family background. A typical profligate young master style. "You look quite handsome, could it be that you're a Lord Rabbit?" the other profligate young master said with a smile. "This young master is Zhu Long Star. Do you know what these three represent?" Zhu Long Star hooted. "My sister is the North Region's #1 genius, the world's #1 beauty, Zhu Xian Heir, and my brother-in-law is even more impressive, Great Ling Nation's Emperor, heaven-grade alchemist Ling Han." "Ha, if you say so, then so be it. And I say I'm Ling Han, Lord Rabbit, be good, call me brother-in-law," the other profligate young master said. Zhu Xian Heir couldn't help but reveal an annoyed expression. This dirty water splashed onto her, making her angry. Hu Niu, however, clapped her hands and said, "Let's gift the bewitching woman to him." A fight actually started upstairs, and Zhu Long Star shouted, "Damn guy, you're not worthy to be this young master's brother-in-law. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? This young master will beat you until your face is bloody." "You think I'm afraid of you?" The two fought from upstairs, instantly causing a commotion in the building. However, the two of them had great statuses, so others didn't dare to step forward to stop them, and could only run out. Zhu Long Star and the other young man were already fighting on the streets, throwing punches and kicks. Neither of them were elites, and when they fought, they were like local ruffians, their faces and bodies covered in bruises and swollen wounds. With such a ruckus on the streets, the guards naturally came very quickly, and took both of them down. "How dare you dare to take me down? Do you know who I am?" The other profligate young master was similarly arrogant. After being taken down, not only did he not feel the slightest bit of fear, he instead became extremely arrogant. "I'm Qian Feng, my clan brother is Qian Wuyong." "Qian Wuyong, don't you know that he's His Majesty's good brother, his left and right arm?" the young man shouted. The clansmen of the Qian clan, Ling Han frowned. Those old friends from Huyang University all entered the army now, holding not low positions. Although their tier wasn't high, they obtained Ling Han's trust. After all, he didn't have that much time to cultivate the backbone. But these were the problems that came with it. People born from great clans were naturally high and mighty, and it was difficult for them to throw away the habits they'd maintained for a long time. On the contrary, coming out from the desolate north, these people from great clans instead became arrogant and had less and less reverence. It was time for a good treatment. Chapter 765. With Qian Feng's shout, the soldiers all seemed hesitant. This was a person with a great background. Was it really good to capture him? If they captured him now, wouldn't they release him later? Qian Wuyong, that was His Majesty's old friend, a meritorious minister of the empire. Could his younger brother be touched? What the hell is Qian Wuyong? Zhu Longxing was even more arrogant. "My sister is Zhu Xian Heir, the future empress of the Great Ling Empire. You guys capture this guy for me, throw him in prison, and lock him up for a few months." Hu Niu was instantly furious. She was Ling Han's empress. Ling Han didn't bat an eyelid. He'd like to see how these soldiers would handle it. This was a microcosm of the Great Ling Empire. "Young masters, don't make a scene here, it's not a good influence. Come with us to the Capital Guard camp. After all, you still have to go through the procedures," an officer said, his tone very polite. Although the two's identities hadn't been verified, this was the imperial capital, and how many people dared to make trouble here and randomly give themselves an identity, especially a noble one? This definitely had to be verified, and the imposter wouldn't have a good end. Thus, this officer was very careful. Zhu Longxing and Qian Feng both refused to let it go, both wanting to arrest the other in military court. Spoiled brats had to abide by the rules when they fought for a woman's favor. Whoever had the upper hand would end it, and normally wouldn't put the other party to death. After all, if all the spoiled brats died, who would show their prestige to? Ling Han shook his head. The territory was expanding rapidly, but the quality of the whole country couldn't keep up. It was no wonder that he only said two things. One was to expand, and the other was to appease the people, but he didn't say to rule the country strictly. He stood out and said, "Capture both of them, escort them to the east gate, and whip them 100 times. Hey, who do you think you are, beating as you please? Do you know who my elder brother is?" Qian Feng shouted sternly. He was really angry. Even these soldiers were respectful to him, so who the hell were you? Brother-in-law. Zhu Longxing called out in surprise. "Your Majesty!" The soldiers all knelt down. Your Majesty, Qian Feng was dumbfounded. This was the monarch of the Great Ling Empire, and also the most popular person in the North region at present, and he actually dared to rebuke the other party. It should be known that these clans of Rain Country were originally nothing more than fart after they left the Fallen Moon Gorge, and it was all because of Ling Han that they had today's glory. He really had eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Drag him away and whip him." "Yes, Your Majesty." Those soldiers immediately became like wolves and tigers. This was the decree of the current emperor. Brother-in-law, why did even I hit sis? Zhu Longxing hurriedly called out when he saw Zhu Xian'er. He naturally hoped that his sister could plead for leniency on his behalf. However, Zhu Xian'er only shook her head at him and did not speak at all. The two hedonistic sons were dragged away. Who asked them to bump into the muzzle of a gun? However, if it wasn't for the chance encounter here, he wouldn't have known that Zhu Longxing was already here. Thinking about it, it was quite funny. Back then, Zhu Longxing really had the foresight to call him brother-in-law. Returning to the imperial palace, Ling Han immediately set out on the issue of strengthening the control of laws. In reality, power would definitely bring with it special privileges. Otherwise, how could power cause people to revere it? Ling Han didn't want to make every clan as clean as water, but there had to be a bottom line that couldn't be broken. For example, fighting and jealousy, these were small matters. He didn't have to be so strict, but forcing good women into prostitution, forcibly seizing other people's wives, and seizing property, these kinds of activities were definitely necessary. Today, punishing Zhu Longxing and Qian Feng in public was to punish the chicken to warn the monkeys. Who asked him to just have this idea, and these two guys bumped into him. Although the two of them were only whipped 100 times, the Qian clan's patriarch entered the imperial palace at night and asked for an audience. He knelt before Ling Han and apologized, tears streaming down his face as if he had committed some enormous sin. Ling Han's tone was slightly strict as he warned him to properly control the members of the clan, drawing a bottom line for him. If he crossed this line, then he wouldn't care about any friendship, and kill those who deserved to be killed. The Qian clan's patriarch was stern and respectful. The clan head of the Qian clan was awe-inspiring. He was only in the spiritual pedestal tier, and was terrified just standing in front of Ling Han, so how could he dare to anger Ling Han? Moreover, the Qian clan was a few hundred times more prestigious than when they were in the Rain Country, so how could he be willing to be beaten back to his original state? The next day, Zhu Longxing covered his butt and came to see Ling Han. Previously, because Zhu Xian'er left the imperial city with Ling Han, although he kept saying that he was Zhu Xian'er's younger brother, not many people believed him. Of course, no one did anything to him. What if it was true? Thus, his little days were neither good nor bad. Now that his brother-in-law finally returned, he obviously had to act coquettishly. It would be best if he could be conferred the title of king, then he'd be awe-inspiring and beat up whoever he didn't like. "Brother-in-law, I missed you so much," he cried upon seeing him, throwing himself in front of Ling Han and hugging his legs tightly. "Huh, Ling Han, Uncle Rabbit didn't know you had such a big son," the rabbit teased. "Sis, brother-in-law, are my eyes playing tricks on me, or is a rabbit talking?" Zhu Longxing instantly forgot to curry favor and stared blankly at the rabbit, his face full of shock. What's so great about Uncle Rabbit being able to talk? Back then, Uncle Rabbit was invincible in the world, with unparalleled divine might. Who didn't submit? The rabbit boasted. Zhu Longxing didn't know, and was shocked by the fact that a rabbit could talk. Instantly, he admired this rabbit greatly and began to flatter. Needless to say, the rabbit really liked this and was flattered happily, feeling that Zhu Longxing looked much more pleasing to the eye. In a mere 2 months, the North region was completely unified and came under the rule of the Great Ling Empire. This was obviously because the level of the martial art in the North region was too low, and the strength of the deity transformation tier could sweep through it. Added with Ling Han's identity as a heaven-grade alchemist, the resistance collapsed after the Half-Moon sect and the other 4 great forces surrendered. In the next 3 regions, the level of martial art in the West region was the lowest, but it also had deity transformation tier elites. The East region and the South region both had heaven tier elites, so it wouldn't be so easy to conquer them. After the North region was unified, Ling Han wasn't in a hurry to lead his troops west, but instead began to manage the army, picking out martial artists above the spiritual ocean tier, and building high-end battle power in the way of the Purple Moon Empire. After all, the level of martial art in the other 3 regions was high, and relying on the previous ordinary soldiers was simply a joke. Elites could kill them all with a wave of their hands, and all the wealth of the Great Ling Empire had to be spent on compensation. Ling Han also had no lack of high-level secret techniques, so he could obviously imitate the Purple Moon Empire, which was also the most tempting for martial artists. In the North region, the spiritual ocean tier could completely be called an expert. Originally, these people naturally disdained to become soldiers, but now they were all fighting to enlist, as if afraid that the secret technique would be snatched away if they fell behind. Moreover, Ling Han also had the Black Tower to provide medicinal ingredients, and he was even a heaven-grade alchemist. The Alchemist Society was also at his disposal, adding medicinal pills into the rewards, which similarly had a positive effect, and the situation was gratifying. On this day, Ling Han was just discussing the matter of setting out to the West region with the officials in the court when an elite barged into the hall, looking disdainfully. "Which one can make the decision?" this person said loftily. Chapter 766. This was a very strange person. His figure was very tall, and his face was simple and unadorned. There were actually lines on his face, as if he was born with them, but this wasn't what was strange. 2 small buns grew on his head, as if a deer was about to grow horns. The presence of the heaven tier, and it was a high level or even a peak existence. "Fourth uncle, what's there to talk about with these lowly humans? Just take them all down directly." A youngster also walked into the palace, wearing a multicolored battle suit, like a gorgeously dressed peacock. Helian Sun Shui came over and pressed her voice into a line, saying, "The big one is Xin Yu Cheng, and the small one is Xin Yu Dongming. Don't provoke them, fool them away." Ling Han came to a realization. This was the sea race. Truly arrogant. Did they really think this was their territory? Thinking again, it was no wonder. Xin Yu alone had close to 30 shattering void tier elites. What kind of accumulation and terrifying strength was this? In the eyes of the sea race, this was a remote and desolate place. However, Xin Yu Dong. Ling Han walked towards the peacock man. This was Helian Sun Shui's fiancé. He heard Helian Sun Shui say that the Helian and Xin Yu families were discussing an alliance to fight against the Wenren royal family together. Among the 3 great royal families of the North Sea, the Wenren were the strongest, even to the extent that they could annihilate any one of the other 2 families by themselves. Thus, the 2 families could only fight together. But how could they guarantee that everyone was of one mind and wouldn't stab each other in the back? Alliance by marriage. Helian Sun Shui was the most outstanding woman in the younger generation of the Helian family, while Xin Yu Dongming was the most outstanding man of the Xin Yu family. Although he was slightly inferior to Helian Sun Shui, he wasn't much weaker. However, Helian Sun Shui was too dazzling. However, after Helian Sun Shui discovered the matter of settling accounts, she had a plan to obtain the Vial of Curses and could only carry it out secretly. Otherwise, once the crime of murdering a royal family was put on her head, even the royal family would be furious. Unexpectedly, she was blasted by the large silver spider and lost all her memories, running away with Ling Han from then on. Only after a spring breeze did she recover her memories. When she returned to the North Sea, she found that she was pregnant, so she no longer had the thought of marrying Xinyu Dongming. She hid and gave birth to a child. But paper could not contain fire, and the news leaked out. Naturally, she could only escape with her son. Now, the oceanic race had finally caught up. Ling Han withdrew his gaze and stood up from the throne. He strode over and said, "I can make decisions. Do you have any advice for me?" He was not afraid that the two from the Xinyu clan would recognize Hellian Sun Shui, because Hellian Sun Shui not only changed her appearance with the help of an appearance-altering pill, but also cultivated his ancient technique, which allowed her to change her cultivation and aura. She was now only in the flower life tier, so no matter what, no one would associate her with the Pearl of the North Sea. Xinyu Cheng's gaze swept over, and a terrifying pressure overflowed in all directions, able to make the skin of a deity transformation tier cultivator crack. He had the intention to take Ling Han down a notch, but to his disappointment and surprise, Ling Han looked perfectly fine, and was not the slightest bit affected by his words. This human was a bit strange. But that was all. Xinyu clan's foundation was too deep. Even when facing the 5 great ancient sects, he could keep his back straight and even berate them from a higher position. What did this mere deity transformation tier junior amount to? He opened his mouth and said, "This lord wants you to find a person." "Oh, who?" Ling Han said indifferently, although he already knew in his heart that it was Hellian Sun Shui. Xinyu Cheng raised his hand and threw out a painting scroll, and said, "Use all your power to find the woman in the painting. If you find her, this lord will reward you. If you can't, you can all prepare for your own funerals." Fourth uncle, the environment here is pretty good. Xinyu Dongming sat on the throne and carelessly said, "Let's stay here and wait." Xinyu Cheng pondered slightly, then nodded. Although the North region was far from the size of the North Sea, it wasn't something two people could find. Even if they ran all over the place, they wouldn't find anything, so it was better to wait here for news. Besides, although he was a senior, Xinyu Dongming's position in the clan was above his. This boy had very pure ancestral blood, but it hadn't completely awakened yet. His future accomplishments were limitless, and he received the focused nurturing of many shattering void-tier elites in the clan. So as long as it wasn't too excessive, he would let Xinyu Dongming do as he pleased. "Palace maids over there, bring the things you're carrying over." Xinyu Dongming waved at the palace maids standing solemnly on both sides. These palace maids carried all kinds of fruits in their hands, colorful and fragrant, making people's mouths twitch. Those palace maids all walked towards Ling Han, and a hint of killing intent rose in Ling Han's eyes, but after seeing Hellian Sun Shui, he forcibly suppressed his killing intent and nodded, indicating for those palace maids to do as he was told. The officials in the imperial court all felt humiliated. This was their Great Ling Empire's central authority, representing Great Ling Empire's face, and now an outsider occupied the throne and casually berated it. But what could be done? The other party was too powerful, and even Yuan Qing he couldn't bear that imposing manner. Who could rival him? Forcibly falling out would only bring about one's own destruction, so the choice was naturally simple. Xinyu Dongming casually took some fruits to eat, and his brows instantly relaxed as he said, "Fourth uncle, these things are really delicious, have a taste." He tossed some fruits to Xinyu Cheng. Xinyu Cheng was old and prudent, obviously not as disregarding his image as Xinyu Dongming, but the other party had good intentions, and if he didn't accept, it wouldn't be justifiable, so he plucked a grape and put it into his mouth. Instantly, he also revealed a look of astonishment. Too fresh, too delicious. Moreover, the grape also contained a sliver of spiritual power that could be directly absorbed. Although pitifully little, it was definitely good stuff for low-level martial artists. If the Xinyu clan could grow grapes like this in large quantities, then in 20 to 30 years, the entire strength of the clan would definitely be able to increase by a level. Xinyu Dongming became more and more presumptuous. He stared at the palace maids, and couldn't help but reveal a bewitching smile as he said, "I didn't expect human women to be so good. Hey, steward, from now on, prepare a large box of these fruits for me every month, and also these palace maids, 10. Although humans are lowly, there's no harm in playing with them. 10 is enough, I can't play with any more. Ling Han revealed a smile, but it was extremely cold. You ran into my territory, stole my seat, and still want me to send you money and women. What, you're still not convinced? Xin Yu Dongming sneered. What a joke. He was the proud son of heaven of the Xin Yu clan of the Northern Sea, and he was willing to sit here because he was worthy of you. Otherwise, with the lowly and filthy human race, he wouldn't even want to enter. I plan to stay here for a month. During this month, find me the woman in the picture scroll. If you find her, I'll leave, but don't forget the fruits and palace maids every month. If you can't find her, then you can go die, he said. The smile on Ling Han's face became even more resplendent, and he said, I've tolerated you for so long, but you insist on seeking your own death. Then I can only kill you. The might of heaven cannot be violated. Remember it in your next life. Chapter 767. There were all kinds of extraordinary people in the immortal realm. The most common, but also the one with the highest status, was alchemists. That was because if one did not have a weapon, they could buy a piece of godly metal, and no matter how much they struggled, they would be able to forge a usable weapon. And after using it for a long time, one's martial intent would be infused into the weapon, and it could actually be used as a god tool. Moreover, it would be a god tool that belonged to the alchemist alone. In the immortal realm, the definition of a god tool was a weapon that anyone could use, and it also possessed the might of an immortal level. Thus, the difference between a weapon that had been nurtured by the alchemist and a god tool was that one could only be used by the alchemist, and would be useless in the hands of others, while the other could be used by anyone as long as they had enough power to activate it. Of course, alchemists were also considered extraordinary people. They would inscribe special formations on their weapons, as well as other complicated things, so that their weapons could become like cultivators and possess great might. Because of this, the status of alchemists was not low either. Every cultivator yearned for a suitable weapon. Additionally, alchemists could also create armors, which could increase one's defense. Only when one was alive would there be endless possibilities. Other than that, there were also alchemists. For example, the great formation of the imperial capital had been created by a grandmaster alchemist, and he had a very high status on the joint peace planet. Even the 3 great emperors would be very polite when they saw him. And the next batch of extraordinary people belonged to an extremely rare group, such as alchemists, astrologers, and puppeteers. Puppeteers could make an inanimate object seem as if it had a life of its own. In the imperial capital, the works of puppeteers could also be found. For example, there were a very small number of horse carriages, and the horses that rode on them were not demonic beasts, but puppets. This was a combination of alchemy, and even some things related to alchemy. It was very complicated. Thus, the number of puppeteers was pitifully small. Those puppet horse carriages in the imperial capital were not the works of the current generation, but had been left behind from who knew how long ago. Thus, when 3 people riding puppet beasts suddenly appeared on the island, Yang Taiching and the others were naturally shocked. This was a deserted island, and there was even a shocking natural crater. Puppeteers had even appeared. This was too strange. Haha, I did not think that there would actually be guests coming to the island, the young man riding the tiger said. Previously, I felt some commotion, and thought that there was something wrong with the machine-operated bird. I did not think that there would really be guests. As the captain, Yang Taiching naturally would not pass on this responsibility. He clasped his fists and said, "We encountered a shipwreck and drifted here. Please tell us what exactly this place is." "This is the Earth's core island," the young man riding the tiger said with a smile. He pointed at the deep crater on the side and said, "We call this Earth's core cave. It is said that it can lead to the center of the Earth." "Oh, that's right, I am Guxiuwen, and these 2 are my junior brothers, Ning Tai and Dong Yulong." "Greetings." Ning Tai and Dong Yulong both clasped their fists in greeting. Ling Han and the others also gave their names and introduced themselves. "So you have encountered an attack from demonic beasts, and damaged your ship, which is why you have drifted here." Guxiuwen nodded and said, "This island is a place of seclusion, and the people on this island have no intention of entering the mortal world. Instead, the men farm and the women weave, enjoying a peaceful life. Everyone, please come to our village and rest for a while. Can we make a ship for you, and then send you off? Ning Tai continued. However, we are already used to peace, so please keep the location of this island a secret. Do not leak it out and destroy our peaceful life, Dong Yulong said. Yang Taiching and the others all nodded. We still have 3 companions. Though Yang Taiching did not like Luo Wu and Fan Yong as the captain, he still had responsibilities. Got it. We still have 2 junior brothers who are hurrying over. Later, we'll meet up in the village, Guxiuwen said with a smile. Yang Taiching nodded. Everyone, please come with us. Guxiuwen urged the tiger he was riding on, and slowly walked down the mountain. Everyone followed, and after walking for close to an hour, they finally passed through layers of forest. A valley appeared in front of them. The mountain walls were steep, and it was surrounded by mountains on all sides. There was only an extremely narrow entrance. 1 man can hold the pass and 10,000 cannot get through. This thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. As long as there was an elite standing guard, even if there were thousands of troops outside, they would not be able to enter. Similarly, as long as there was an elite standing guard here, the people inside would not be able to come out either. There was no one standing guard at the entrance. Instead, there were only 2 stone statues. One was an 8-legged spider, and the other was a large bird with its wings spread. Its claws were sturdy, and even thicker than a human's arm. They entered the valley, and suddenly, the valley opened up, revealing a beautiful scene. In this place, farmland formed a circle, and in the center was a very, very large village. There were small bridges, flowing water and houses, and it was filled with the scenery of the countryside. Suddenly seeing this scene would cause one to forget the cruelty of battle and the bloodshed of power. Only relaxation and relief remained. This is really a good place, Yang Taiching said spontaneously. The 3 of you, I wonder if I can retire here in the future? Guxiuwen chuckled and said, if Brother Yang has decided to retire, then why not? However, let me remind you that after coming here, please forget your identity as a cultivator. We strictly forbid fighting here. Whether you are in the heavenly body tier or in the shattering void tier, you are only a farmer or a weaver here. Everyone nodded. Every place had its own rules. Even a powerful dragon could not suppress a local snake, what more when they were living under someone else's roof. In the farmland, there were people leading cows and plowing the fields, and there were people transplanting seedlings. They looked busy yet leisurely. They walked through the small path between the farmland and entered into the village. There were a few pedestrians on the street, and the majority stayed inside their houses. Some were watering plants, and some were sunbathing. There was also smoke rising from the chimneys, and it appeared incredibly peaceful. The people here all like peace and quiet, so please do not disturb others. After coming here, everyone has forgotten their previous identity, Guoxiuwen reminded. After walking for a while, they arrived at the center of the village. This was a very large manor, and it was about 1/3 the size of the whole village. It was surrounded by walls. The main gate was wide open, and after entering, there was a very large courtyard that was paved with bluestone bricks. It looked a little like a martial arts field, but there was not a single person practicing martial arts. Everyone, I will first arrange for your accommodations. My master likes to make strange and rare things, and once he makes one, he may take a few days. Thus, you may have to wait for a few days before I can introduce you to him, Guoxiuwen said apologetically. Everyone said that it was fine. If they did not receive any help, who knew how many days they would have to drift on the boundless sea before they could return to the sea route of the Yang clan. Thus, they did not mind waiting here for a few days. Guoxiuwen led them to the left side of the manor. There were a great many small courtyards here, and he assigned them one by one. After the arrangements were made, Luo Wu, Fan Yong, and Lu Ying also arrived under the guidance of 2 young men. These 2 young men were both Guoxiuwen's junior brothers. One was called Cui Da, and the other was called Bu Jingyun. Ling Han and Shui Yanyu stayed in the same courtyard. In any case, they had the Black Tower, so they did not care about their living environment. At this moment, the sky had also darkened. "It's very strange," Ling Han said. Chapter 768. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Today, only the two of you will die here." "Bullshit." Xin Yucheng opened his hands and grabbed towards Ling Han, but his expression became solemn. This human was extraordinarily fast, and his physique was tyrannical. He really wasn't easy to deal with. Fighting in the air, Ling Han naturally had no more misgivings and exploded towards his opponent. Pung, 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 the two fought fiercely. They were both fighting in close quarters, and their fists landed on flesh. They were not like supreme elites at all, but street ruffians, punching and kicking each other without any technique at all. But after fighting like this for a while, they retreated at the same time. There was no result to fighting like this. Ling Han's physique reached the level of 9th tier rare metal, and Xin Yucheng wasn't weak either. He could also take Ling Han's attacks head-on without his body breaking. An ancient true dragon's physique was naturally tyrannical. Although Xin Yucheng's ancestral blood was pitifully little, as long as there was a shred of true dragon blood circulating within his body, it was enough to elevate his physique to an astonishing degree, comparable to rare metal of the same level. At least, before his ancestral blood reached the limit, he would be a top-notch body cultivator. This was the advantage of a king of the sea race, innately superior to others. It was no wonder that the sea race would be so proud. This was a racial advantage. Ling Han's hands touched, and golden light instantly overflowed. He operated the earth-overturning seal, and at the same time, activated the Eye of Truth. He didn't believe that his opponent had cultivated every part of his body to a perfect and flawless degree. There would always be a weak spot. Xin Yucheng also shook his hands, and a strange thing happened. His hands actually turned into claws, flashing with an azure luster. Dragon claws. His bloodline was limited, and he could only turn his hands into the shape of a dragon, and he could only maintain it for a certain amount of time. But what kind of existence was a dragon claw? It was definitely the world's most powerful weapon, and breaking gold and jade was nothing difficult. Both sides increased their battle prowess, and after confronting each other for a while, they charged towards each other. The earth-overturning seal clashed head-on against the dragon claw. After every collision, golden and green light exploded in the sky, and the entire imperial capital could see it clearly. "Ha, human, your physique is indeed very strong, and your battle prowess is also very strong, but your cultivation level is your greatest weakness. After all, you are only in the deity transformation realm." Xin Yucheng laughed coldly. His dragon claws were enough to resist the earth-overturning seal, and he even had a slight advantage, while his power completely crushed Ling Han. "Is that so?" Ling Han took a deep breath and activated the power of the nation. Immediately, karmic luck enveloped him, and his strength soared. Martial techniques, nation fate, medicinal pills, and many other things could all increase one's battle prowess, and battle prowess could be attributed to many factors. For example, if the same person used a wooden sword or an iron sword to fight, their battle prowess would definitely be different. What the nation's fortune increased was power. Now that the Great Ling Empire had unified the North region, it was enough to raise Ling Han's battle prowess by 5 stars. In reality, it was the infusion of fortune that had forcibly raised his strength by 5 stars. This could be considered as Black Tower's power boost, but it wasn't that powerful. With the increase of 5 stars of power, although Ling Han still couldn't match high-level heaven-tier warriors, he already didn't lose by too much. He used the Demon Fairy Step, and under the enhancement of the Thunderclap 9th Heaven, his figure flashed like a ghost, searching for Xin Yucheng's weakness and bombarding it. Xin Yucheng only had true dragon bloodline, and wasn't a true dragon. Moreover, true dragons definitely had weaknesses. He was bombarded by Ling Han, and instantly screamed in pain. Ling Han really found his weakness and beat him until he was in extreme pain, bleeding all over his body. "You've angered me." Xin Yucheng glared angrily. He was of the North Sea's royal family, and more so a descendant of a true dragon. How honorable was he, but now, he was actually brutally beaten by a puny human, which he couldn't accept. He roared loudly, his body half-squatting, the muscles all over his body pulsing, and the two small lumps on top of his head had a faint light flickering. Ling Han sneered and said, "Are you constipated?" Xin Yuqing didn't pay attention to his teasing, and just held it in. A true dragon's shadow actually appeared behind him, as long as 3,000 meters, rising like a pillar. This was an azure dragon, vivid and lifelike, and one could even see the dragon's whiskers dancing under the air currents. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless, and directly unleashed the Revere Life Sword. "Lord Ancestral Dragon, please help me eliminate this human." Xin Yuqing roared, charging towards Ling Han, and that true dragon shadow in the sky also moved from its pillar-like position, pouncing at Ling Han together. There was a hint of shattering void tier might. Using Black Tower's power boost, Ling Han immediately shook his head. Wasting the chance of Black Tower's power boost on a high-level heaven tier warrior was truly a waste. If Xin Yuqing knew, he'd definitely die from anger. High-level heaven tier warriors, how many were there in the world? However, there was a hint of shattering void tier might, forcefully resisting it. He brandished his sword to meet it, his right hand wielding the sword to display 10,000 techniques return to 1, while his left hand slapped out with Earth Overturning Seal, activating the demonic pattern at the same time, bringing along a hint of power of regulation. "Reckless," Xin Yuqing sneered. He summoned Ancestral Blood, which was a mystic art that could only be used after the royal family reached the heaven tier. Due to the difference in Ancestral Blood's density, the power of the true dragon shadow was determined. The strongest could even reach the 9th layer of the shattering void tier, but unfortunately, with the realm's suppression, it was impossible to break through to the divine tier. However, no matter what, this was the sea race's ultimate move, kick-ass to the extreme. Shattering void tier, the strongest in the world. Ling Han and Xin Yuqing clashed, and a terrifying chi shook and grand light shot out, exploding like a small sun in the sky, making the people below temporarily blind. Other than a field of light, they couldn't see anything else. There was a flash of light, and Ling Han was sent flying at least 3,000 meters away. His whole body was covered in blood, and his arms were bent at a strange angle. His chest had also caved in, and it was clear that the bones in his arms and ribs had all been broken. The true dragon shadow was tyrannical as expected, heavily injuring Ling Han with a single strike. He had a physique on the level of 9th tier rare metal. Overestimating yourself? Xin Yuqing charged over. He was going to behead this terrifying human. "Nothing more than this," Ling Han said indifferently. His arms spread out, and his injuries healed at a visible speed. His chest also bulged, and the broken bones healed almost instantly. Diamond body. This was a mystic art of the indestructible heaven scroll. Strengthening the physique was only one aspect, and there was also supreme recovery ability. This was the most terrifying thing. "You heavily injured me 10,000 times, and I recovered 10,000 times, so what?" Xin Yuqing immediately stuttered. Was this human a monster? After receiving such a heavy blow, he actually recovered immediately. "Are you really a human? Are you sure you're not from the Silver Moon clan that is famous for their powerful recovery?" No. Even the Silver Moon race's recovery ability shouldn't be so kick-ass. Ling Han raised his sword to meet the attack, and said, "The battle has just begun." Xin Yuqing calmed down, and said, "To instantly recover from such heavy injuries, you must have paid a huge price. You definitely won't be able to use it more than a few times." He attacked again, wanting to break Ling Han's limit. Chapter 769. In Xin Yuqing's opinion, such a terrifying recovery ability must come at a huge price, or else it would be too unreasonable. One had to know that even with Ling Han's intelligence, he spent 10,000 years to comprehend the first layer of the indestructible heaven scroll and cultivate the body of diamond. Without freakish recovery ability, how could he be worthy of such a long time of comprehension, and how could he be worthy of Black Tower's level? He'd be too embarrassed to greet others when going out. "I said that I would kill the two of you today, so I will definitely kill you." Ling Han once again used the Earth Overturning Seal, and 10,000 techniques returned to 1. The Eye of Truth searched for a weak point, and the thunderclap ninth heaven boosted his power. He actually already operated 3 mystical powers, and although 10,000 techniques returned to one wasn't a mystical power, its power definitely wouldn't be weaker than mystical powers before the god tier. A 3-meter-long sword ray swept out, slashing towards Xin Yucheng. Die, die, die. Xin Yucheng brought the true dragon's shadow down. There was another powerful impact, and Ling Han was once again sent flying. This time, he was sent flying for another 3,000 meters, and many of his bones were also shattered. However, he revealed a smile and said, as expected, although the true dragon's shadow was summoned, it's not a real true dragon after all. There's only a sliver of the will of martial art, or else it wouldn't be that easy for me to recover, and transforming into lightning can reduce a portion of the impact. Theoretically, after transforming into lightning, one could ignore all physical attacks because one was lightning that couldn't be harmed by physical force. However, it was different with the will of martial art attached to power, and a king who cultivated Qi had the qualifications to harm the transformation into lightning. Thus, even if the true dragon's shadow only had a sliver of the will of martial art, it could still pose a threat to Ling Han's body of lightning, but added with the defense of the body of diamond, it wasn't enough to instantly kill Ling Han. Not being able to instantly kill meant that the recovery ability of the body of diamond could come into play. Ling Han smiled and said, "This is your ultimate move? Is that all?" Xin Yucheng's face twitched. He wanted to refute, but didn't know what to say. The true dragon's silhouette possessed a sliver of shattering void tier's might, and theoretically, even 10,000 Ling Hans should have been swept away. But now, though the latter was heavily injured every time he received an attack, his fuck you recovery was really too fast. It wasn't that the ancestral dragon phantom wasn't strong enough, but its recovery ability was just too perverse. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe you can keep doing this. Xin Yucheng let out a roar that sounded like a dragon's roar, bringing along the true dragon's shadow to attack Ling Han. Ling Han had no intention of dodging at all. He was going to attack head-on. His opponent was only in the heaven tier, and his attack was enough to pose a threat to him. And the fiercer his counterattack, the sooner his opponent's ultimate move would end. Both of them were certain that the other's ultimate move could not be maintained forever, so they both launched their strongest attacks at each other, wanting to break the other's limit first. Xin Yucheng had really used his ultimate move, but Ling Han still held back. At least he still had the Black Tower's power boost that he hadn't used. Otherwise, the battle prowess of the shattering void tier would be enough to crush his opponent. Battle, 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 the sky darkened. Xin Yucheng's expression became more and more unsightly. Why didn't Ling Han's recovery ability decrease in the slightest? It was impossible. Even if Ling Han took treasured medicines, the effects would definitely be worse each time. Even natural treasures had their limits. What was going on? On the contrary, his ancestral blood had already been completely burned and was about to dry up, needing at least a year of recovery before it could be used again. Ling Han noticed the change in his expression and said with a smile, "Old man, are you out of ideas?" "Bullshit, a mere human, just an ant, still can't kill you." Xin Yucheng obviously wouldn't admit defeat and said with feigned disdain. The dragon claw waved again, but it was already exhausted, its power greatly reduced. Meanwhile, Ling Han's battle prowess was undamaged. After cultivating Body of Diamond, his recovery ability reached a hair-raising level, and he even had 10 drops of indestructible true fluid that he hadn't used yet. If Xin Yucheng knew, the latter would probably despair. Battle, battle, Xin Yucheng's battle prowess started to drop. Although Ling Han's origin power and physical strength were also greatly consumed, don't forget that he was the Alchemy Emperor. He could casually take all kinds of medicinal pills, and his situation would definitely be better than Xin Yucheng's. Xin Yucheng finally wanted to retreat. If he continued to fight, it was really possible that even he would die here. In the sky, the true dragon image behind him suddenly flashed a few times, and then disappeared. His ancestral blood had been completely used up, and it would take time to recover again. I'll let you live for now. The next time my race descends, it will be the day of your destruction. Xin Yucheng threw down some polite words, and was about to slip away. Fourth uncle. Xinyu Dongming was greatly shocked. You fucking left me here? This human was so ruthless. Would he want to eat stewed dragon meat? Ling Han sneered and said, I already said that you're going to die here today. Where else do you want to go? He flashed to intercept, and with the addition of the thunderclap ninth heaven, his speed was even faster than Xinyu Cheng's. Just a sliver faster was enough. Xinyu Cheng awkwardly discovered that he actually couldn't leave. His face revealed a severe expression. You won't let me leave, then I'll fight you to the death. Ling Han brandished his sword. This was the Revere Life Sword, and there was an exceptional killing formation carved on it. If you were really hit by it, even if you had a physique of 9th tier rare metal, so what? You'd still be injured. Xinyu Cheng didn't dare to fight the Revere Life Sword head-on, and as his fists moved, he blasted out one strong wind after another. This was still very frightening and full of destructive power. Ling Han trapped his opponent, and with one sword to the left and one sword to the right, he exhausted his opponent's strength. Xinyu Cheng was both angry and shocked. In terms of true battle prowess, Ling Han definitely wasn't his match, and there was at least a gap of 5 stars. But the other's advantage lay in extreme speed, and he also had a terrifying recovery ability, actually making him unable to leave or outlast him. Could it be that he was really going to be humiliated and reduced to a prisoner? Xinyu Cheng mustered up his remaining courage. He was from the North Sea's royal family, and if he was captured, would he still have face to see others in the future? Until now, he still didn't believe that Ling Han dared to kill him and Xinyu Dongming. The North Sea's royal family was too powerful to the point that a shattering void tier elite could wipe out this place, so how would the other dare to kill? However, his battle prowess was getting weaker and weaker, and after fighting for another 3 days, he finally exhausted his strength and was captured by Ling Han. This loss was truly unreconciled. Xinyu Cheng gritted his teeth. If it weren't for this guy's terrifying recovery ability, who knew how many hundreds of times he'd have killed him, but now he became a prisoner, so how could he be reconciled? Escort them to the East Gate. This emperor will personally behead them. Ling Han said loudly, his voice loud and clear, spreading throughout the entire imperial city. Long live the emperor! The subjects all went crazy. Who didn't witness with their own eyes that the person who was His Majesty's enemy turned into a true dragon, and His Majesty could slay dragons? What did that mean? The Great Ling Empire was invincible. You dare! Xinyu Cheng was truly scared this time. This human really dared to kill him. Why wouldn't I dare? Ling Han sneered, waved his hand, and had Xinyu Cheng and Xinyu Dongming be escorted to the East Gate. Chapter 770. Ling Han, think carefully, are you really going to kill them? Helian Sun Shui came up, her face full of worry. Ling Han glanced at her and said, the sea race is a threshold that can't be avoided. So what if I endure this time? We'll still meet on the battlefield. Since that's the case, why endure it? Moreover, they've already come to behave atrociously. Helian Sun Shui shook her head and said, but we're too weak, after all, and need time to grow. Ling Han shook his head and said, didn't you hear them say that if you can't be found in a month, they'll kill everyone in the imperial city? Then tell me, should I be friendly or not? What a joke, coming to my territory to ask me to hand over people. Don't you know that I call the shots in my territory? Helian Sun Shui was speechless, and paused before saying, next time, Xinyu clan will definitely send shattering void tier elites. What should we do then? Nothing to worry about, Ling Han said with a smile. He was truly fearless. With Black Tower's power installation, he could obtain a chance to possess shattering void tier battle prowess. If he could kill a shattering void tier elite, with this prestige established, the sea race would have to think twice if they wanted to be his opponent again. Moreover, his grasp of Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation was gradually entering an optimal state, and at that time, he'd truly possess shattering void tier battle prowess. This was a world where strength was respected, and if he wasn't strong enough, people would think he was easy to bully. Dignity was fought out, not begged for. He arrived at the east side of the city, and Xinyu Cheng and his nephew were already escorted over, tied with chains all over their bodies, kneeling on the high platform. This was the execution platform, where Zhu Longxing and Qian Feng received 100 lashes previously. Human, you're extremely daring, courting a fatal disaster for yourself, and no one can save you. Xinyu Dongming shouted angrily. I'm a member of the Northern Seas Xinyu royal family, and will become the royal family's master in the future. If you dare to touch a single hair of mine, over 30 shattering void tier elites of my royal family will trample this place and burn you all to ashes. Hearing him say this, many people instantly felt fear. Over 30 shattering void tier elites, this wasn't a joke. Still unrepentant even at death's door? Ling Han walked over and slapped, making Xinyu Dongming's mouth crooked, unable to speak. Xinyu Cheng was still clear-minded and didn't threaten, but he said kindly, Human, we have no malice, but we have no malice, we just want to find that woman. If you let us go, we'll compensate you. Also, if you find that woman, we'll reward you handsomely. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Are you an idiot? Or do you think I'm an idiot? You actually dare to say that I have no ill intentions at this time? I have no ill intentions towards you either. I only want to kill you all. Xinyu Dongming was so anxious that he wanted to stomp his feet. If killing them wasn't considered malicious, then what was? Pa Human, everything is our fault, but please, for the sake of the North Sea's royal family, spare us this once. Xinyu Cheng's words were sincere. As long as they could keep their lives, then everything could start over again. Otherwise, it would all be for naught. Ling Han laughed and patted Xinyu Cheng's shoulder, saying, Now you're quite polite. What were you doing earlier? Unfortunately, it's destined that we can't get along well because the woman you're looking for is my wife. Oh my god. Xinyu Dongming was stunned for a moment before coming to his senses. This was the fucking adulterer. At this moment, he really cursed all 18 generations of Ling Han's ancestors. Who would have thought that the person they were looking for was actually right in front of them? Not only was Helian Xuanxua here, even the adulterer was here. Execute! Ling Han said coldly, raising the Revere Life sword high up, and said loudly, The great Ling dynasty's authority cannot be violated. No matter who comes, those who violate my authority shall be killed without mercy. Pu-piu, he pierced the hearts of Xinyu Ming and his nephew with one strike each. Originally, the effect of beheading was better, but Xinyu Dongming's head was easy to behead, but Xinyu Cheng's wasn't. After all, he had a physique made of 9th-tier rare metal. Even using the Revere Life sword wouldn't work because Ling Han's strength wasn't enough. At that time, it wouldn't be beheading in public, but sawing in public, and the deterrence would be greatly reduced. Long live the Emperor! The entire imperial city's subjects knelt on the ground again. Ling Han had already made his stance clear. The Great Ling dynasty didn't fear any foreign enemies, and those who invaded would be killed without mercy. The Emperor was awe-inspiring. The Emperor was domineering. Such a public killing instantly made Ling Han's image as an emperor deeply ingrained in people's hearts, and when the news spread throughout the entire North region, his image as an iron-blooded emperor would naturally be firmly established. Ling Han returned to the imperial palace, and just as he was about to rest, he suddenly felt a sense of alarm and shouted, Who's there? Tisk, tsk, such keen perception. This lady was only slightly careless and revealed a hint of my presence, and you discovered it. Amidst the praises, a red-haired beauty with an enchanting figure walked out, swaying her plump buttocks and slender waist, extremely alluring. It was Yi Shuang, and the characteristic of red hair was too obvious. Ling Han instantly revealed a vigilant expression. This was a shattering void-tier elite, and it was extremely likely to be a high-level existence. Even if he used Black Tower's power boost, it would probably be difficult for him to be her opponent. Tsk, what's with your attitude, don't you like this lady? Yi Shuang said angrily. This lady saw that you were in some trouble, so she specially ran over to help you. Oh? Ling Han smiled. I really didn't think you were actually a good person, Tisk. If it weren't for this lady feeling that you're especially weird, I wouldn't bother to be nosy. Yi Shuang stroked her chin, thought, and said, And that little girl, she's also very weird. This lady has to take her as a disciple. Pa, Nyo doesn't want? Hunyo appeared out of nowhere and made a face at Yi Shuang Shuang. Ling Han waved his hand at Hunyo and said, "Oh, how do you plan to help me?" Two aspects. First, this lady can reluctantly agree to be a grand saintess empress or something, and second, you call this power of the nation, making this lady laugh her teeth out? Yi Shuang Shuang sneered. Ling Han laughed and said, "I'll bestow you a little palace maid, do you want? You dare tease this lady, you're tired of living." Yi Shuang Shuang's beautiful eyes narrowed, emitting a dangerous aura. Ling Han raised both hands, smiled, and said, "You can't take a joke like this, can't we still be friends happily?" Yi Shuang Shuang laughed loudly, patted Ling Han's shoulder, and said, "Youngster, you're quite daring, this lady has underestimated you. Please advise, where is my power of the nation wrong?" Ling Han said seriously. Chapter 771. Why you can't kill me? Otherwise, my master definitely won't let you off. Guxiuwen said in a trembling voice. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I had thought that a freak like you would be cruel to others, so you would also be cruel to yourself. Why are you so spineless?" He waved his hand and tossed Luo Wu's corpse out. This was really a corpse. Because the true origin stones inside had already been extracted, the formation patterns had also been destroyed. Aside from the fact that the skeleton was still relatively sturdy, there wasn't much difference between this and an ordinary corpse. "You were the one who dealt with this puppet, right?" Ling Han pointed at the corpse and said, "You dug out all the internal organs of a person. You were so ruthless. You'll be afraid when it's your turn." Guxiuwen's body trembled and he defended himself. "No, no, no. It's not the same. That's only a material, not a person." Ling Han was slightly surprised. This person's outlook on life had already been completely twisted. He was obviously greedy for life and afraid of death, yet his methods were incredibly vile and cruel. He slapped him and said, "I don't want to read your filthy memories. Just answer my questions." Shui Yanyu walked over and pressed the tip of her sword against Guxiuwen's neck. She said, "What's the point of wasting words with someone like this? Just kill him." "Oh no." Guxiuwen was scared to death. "Don't kill me, don't kill me. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Please don't kill me." Amidst his screams, the sound of urine could be heard. This person had actually been so scared that he had lost control of his bowels. Shui Yanyu hurriedly covered her nose and hid far away. Ling Han also wanted to kick him. It was really rare to see someone so afraid of death. He coldly said, "Then tell me everything you know." Fine, fine, fine. I'll tell you, I'll tell you." Guxiuwen nodded repeatedly. He began to tell a story. 30,000 years ago, he had already become Peiji's disciple. At that time, he should have only been 6 or 7 years old. He could have been 2 years older, or perhaps 2 years younger. This had already become a blurry memory. During these 30,000 years, he had learned martial arts and puppetry from Peiji. During this process, he had also gained 4 junior brothers. Previously, he didn't know how he had become Peiji's disciple. However, he could sense his own shadow in his 4 junior brothers. Although this island was very remote, there would always be all kinds of accidents at sea. For example, tsunamis or encountering pirates. In a few decades, or even a few centuries, there would occasionally be people who drifted to this island. However, they would all be refined into puppets by Peiji. Sometimes, the refugees would also bring along children. Peiji would select those with good aptitudes and take them as his disciples. However, when he discovered that they had no future to nurture, he would mercilessly kill them. Thus, Guxiuwen deduced that he was also the descendant of some refugee. His parents and relatives had been killed by Peiji, but because of his good aptitude, he was spared and taken in as a disciple. At that time, he had been too young, so he couldn't remember anything at all. Perhaps it was because he had received too much shock that he had voluntarily forgotten this terrifying memory. However, even if he had deduced the truth, he didn't dare to harbor the slightest bit of hatred towards Peiji. That was because Peiji possessed 2 pseudo-sun moon tier puppets. Even if the 5 of them teamed up, they would still be insta-killed. Peiji was an outstanding puppeteer. However, it seemed like he had suffered some kind of trauma, and thus had no desire to display his talents. Thus, he became the local tyrant of this island, bringing nightmares to the people who had been stranded here. As for where Peiji had come from, and where he had learned puppetry techniques, Guoxiuan didn't know. He only knew that the sinkhole was very mysterious. Every year, a mysterious substance would drift out of it. It was like mist, and after being captured and fused with the body of a puppet, it could make the puppet even stronger. Moreover, it would normally take a few months to create a puppet, but with the help of the divine mist, it could be completed in a few days. Divine Mistaling Han was slightly curious and asked, "Where is it? Let me take a look." Guoxiuan crawled to his feet, trembling with fear. He opened a cabinet, retrieved a jade bottle, and said, "The divine mist is sealed in here." His lowered eyes flickered with a sinister expression. This divine mist was extremely helpful for creating puppets. However, if a living person directly inhaled a breath of it, their consciousness would be directly corroded, and they would become a weapon that only knew how to kill. They were very similar to puppets, except that they wouldn't listen to orders. Then, as long as he dealt with Ling Han, he wouldn't be the slightest bit afraid of the remaining woman. Ling Han naturally wouldn't recklessly open the bottle. Instead, he tossed Guoxiuan into the Black Tower first, and then entered with Shui Yenyu. To research the unknown, it was naturally the safest to do so in the Black Tower. Small tower, analyze what this is. Ling Han tossed the jade bottle out. With a thought, "Pa," the jade bottle was instantly shattered. A wisp of black mist immediately surged in the air, transforming into various forms. One moment, it was a beast, the next moment, it was a bird, and the next moment, it took on a human form. However, there was a single horn on its forehead, and there was even a tail on its buttocks. Demonic Chi. Small Tower appeared, and spoke almost at the same time as Ling Han. This was definitely demonic Chi. Ling Han had seen it before in the lower realm. However, although it was only a wisp, it was far more powerful than the Azura Demon Emperor's. Alright. With a thought, Ling Han captured the Azura Demon Emperor. This demon had been exiled in the Black Tower all this time. "Greetings, Master. Master is as blessed as the heavens, and has boundless longevity," the Azura Demon Emperor said in an extremely obsequious manner, vividly displaying the demeanor of a despicable person. With a glance, he saw Shui Yenyu, and immediately knelt down again, saying, "Greetings, Madam. Master truly has good taste. Madam is as beautiful as a celestial maiden, and her bearing is elegant and elegant. She is definitely a peerless beauty that only appears once in millions and millions of years." Shui Yenyu couldn't help but be dumbfounded. How could there be such an obsequious person? Did he still have any shame? Ling Han humphed and said, "Enough with the nonsense. Hurry up, that demonic Chi, and tell me its origin." The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly nodded and bowed. His eyes turned towards that wisp of demonic Chi, and his smoke-like body involuntarily started to tremble violently. In a trembling voice, he said, This is a wisp of demonic Chi from the Demon Master." "Demon Master?" Ling Han glared at him and said, "Explain yourself more clearly." The Azura Demon Emperor didn't have the slightest bit of temper at this moment. He once again nodded and bowed, and said, "In the immortal realm, Genesis tiers are referred to as saints, and in our netherworld, elites of this level are referred to as demon masters." Shui Yenyu was astonished, and interrupted, "He's actually a demonic being from the netherworld?" "That's right. Madam's eyes are indeed as bright as a torch. With your wisdom, all of my thoughts are as clear as sunlight, and there's no place for me to hide." The Azura Demon Emperor flattered madly. Ling Han was astonished. This was actually the aura left behind by a demon master on the same level as the Genesis tier. Hold on, wasn't there a passageway suppressed in the flame cave of the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, and a being who called himself Demon Master Jin Yi was currently trying his best to attack this passageway? Gasp, he had actually challenged a great elite of the Genesis tier. Madam's beauty is like the sun in the sky, and can even blind one's eyes. Madam's temperament is like the bright moon, so pure that it makes one feel ashamed of their inferiority. The Azura Demon Emperor was still shamelessly praising Shui Yenyu, but he suddenly pounced toward the ball of demonic qi. Haha, as long as I fuse with this ball of demonic qi, my strength will greatly increase, and I'll recover to the battle prowess of the mountain river tier. Killing you all will be as easy as slaughtering chickens. He shouted excitedly. Chapter 772. Shattering Void Tier Ice Dragon. Theoretically, this ice dragon was invincible because it was formed from a formation, and as long as the formation existed, it wouldn't die, so it was naturally invincible. However, because it was formed from a formation, it would naturally dissipate once the formation was broken, so it still had weaknesses. Was a formation easy to break? Ling Han had Hellion Sun Shui attack the formation's eyes with all her strength, while he controlled the ice dragon to not attack Hellion Sun Shui. Hellion Sun Shui's attack was extremely terrifying. She'd now raised her cultivation to the peak of the heaven tier, but that last step was too difficult to cross, making her unable to break through. This step might take 3 to 5 years, or 30 to 50 years, 3 to 500 years, or even a lifetime without being able to break through. The Shattering Void tier and the Heaven tier were qualitatively different and definitely couldn't be crossed with a bit of time. Even so, Hellion Sun Shui's attack was still extremely swift and fierce, and one move seemed to be able to flatten the entire Imperial Palace. This wasn't impossible. Shattering Void tier elites could shake down the stars in the sky, so what was so strange about Heaven tier elites flattening an Imperial Palace? Hong, this attack smashed onto the formation, instantly blasting the entire formation back nearly 300 meters. However, the 108 formation's eyes maintained their original spacing, and that ice dragon was still there, coiled behind Ling Han, emitting a bone-chilling coldness. My full power attack actually couldn't destroy this formation. Hellion Sun Shui was shocked. One had to know that she cultivated both origin power and physical arts, and added with her own freakishness. Although it still wasn't enough to break through the barrier of the Shattering Void tier, she was infinitely close to this level. Too shocking. Ling Han was also very satisfied. A 10th tier formation was a 10th tier formation, even a Heaven tier's attack wouldn't break it. Let this lady. Yi Shuang appeared, looking eager to give it a try. Ling Han thought. Let's go up. I'm afraid you can't control yourself and destroy my Imperial Palace. My totem has just formed. Above the Imperial Palace, there was the shadow of a black tower, very faint. It was Great Ling Empire's totem, but it had just formed. According to Yi Shuang, after condensing the power of the people's hearts, it could materialize and protect the country forever. If the country lives, the tower lives. If the country perishes, the tower dies. The two of them rose into the sky. Ling Han still controlled the ice dragon and let Yi Shuang attack freely. This was mainly the defensive limit of the formation. The first strike, battle prowess of 1 star of Shattering Void tier. Yi Shuang was also very cooperative. She raised her palm and slapped toward the formation with supreme power. If it weren't for the ice dragon blocking in front of Ling Han, he wouldn't have been able to watch the battle at close range. The strength of the Shattering Void tier surpassed reason, making him vaguely worried. Even if he used the power boost from the Black Tower now, could he reach the battle prowess of the Shattering Void tier? Boom! With a single palm strike, the array formation was naturally sent flying several hundred meters away. However, it was still maintained very well, and the ice dragon was still there. Second strike, Shattering Void tier 2 stars. Third strike, 3 stars of Shattering Void tier. Until the 5th strike, this great formation finally collapsed, unable to withstand the battle prowess of 5 stars of Shattering Void tier. 108 formation eyes danced chaotically everywhere. This was the limit. Ling Han withdrew the formation eyes, set up the formation again, and said, "Now try to see how many stars of Shattering Void tier battle prowess it can reach with the existence of the ice dragon." Yi Shuang directly faced it with the battle prowess of 5 stars of Shattering Void tier. The ice dragon launched a counterattack, and the sky instantly became icy cold. Even if heaven tier warriors got too close, they'd be frozen into ice and could only attack a few times from a distance. Yi Shuang was suppressed and wasn't the ice dragon's opponent, but she immediately increased her battle prowess, increasing it star by star. Shattering Void Tier 7 stars. Soon, the limit of this great formation was tested, which could rival the battle prowess of 7 stars of Shattering Void Tier. Because when Yi Shuang increased her battle prowess to 8 stars, the ice dragon was immediately suppressed, and not long after, this great formation was once again destroyed. Ling Han was very satisfied. Although there were many Shattering Void Tier warriors now, how many could surpass the battle prowess of 7 stars of Shattering Void Tier? According to Hellion Sun Shui, there were only 3 in the entire Hellion royal family. The freakishness of the sea race lay in the fact that they all had true dragon bloodline, and those with profound bloodline could summon true dragons at the heaven tier with the help of ancestral blood, thereby comprehending the profoundness of the Shattering Void Tier, making breaking through this stage far easier than other heaven tier warriors. However, after advancing into the Shattering Void Tier, the power of bloodline was almost exhausted, and very few could reach the 5th layer of the Shattering Void Tier or above. Most people died with only 2 or 3 stars of Shattering Void Tier battle prowess. This time, even if the Xinyu royal family sent out Shattering Void Tier warriors, Ling Han wouldn't be afraid. The Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation was enough to deal with them. They wouldn't send out their strongest warrior all at once, right? Why are you willing to help me like this? Ling Han asked Yi Shuang. This lady has fallen in love with you, is this reason okay? Yi Shuang said very casually. Ling Han laughed. It was really too fake, but he still said, that's true, this young master is handsome and confident, and has astonishing talent in martial art, so it's natural for me to be liked by millions of women. Hey! Yi Shuang spat and said, you're a frog at the bottom of a well, and don't know what freakishness is. I might as well tell you, in the divine realm, there are many who crossed into the Shattering Void Tier in their 20s. Take this lady for example, I'm Shattering Void Tier at 27. Ling Han made a hot sound, pointed at her, and said, you finally admitted that you're from the divine realm. Yi Shuang raised her snow-white neck like a proud white swan, and said, so what, bite me? Ling Han sighed. How could this woman be such a ruffian, too much of a hoodlum? He was curious and said, then why don't you return to the divine realm, and why help me? Don't say you're a good person, I don't believe it. Yi Shuang's small mouth was half open, and after a while, she said, why can't this lady be a good person? From head to toe, from inside to outside, you don't look like a good person in any way. Ling Han shook his head resolutely. From inside to outside. Damn brat, you're extremely bold in your lust. Speak, when did you peep at this lady? Yi Shuang cracked her fingers, making pa sounds. Fine, don't be so bored and don't change the topic, Ling Han said with a serious expression. Although having the help of a powerful Shattering Void Tier elite is very helpful, I don't want to have an unstable factor by my side. Yi Shuang laughed mischievously and said, saying that, aren't you afraid that this lady will deal with you? You have to know that for a little guy like you, this lady can catch a snail with 3 fingers, and catch one accurately. If you wanted to make a move, you should have done it long ago, why wait until now? Ling Han said indifferently, so I'd rather believe that you have other plans. Yi Shuang propped up her chin, and said, as a deity transformation tier warrior, you're quite daring, knowing this lady's identity and still daring to lay your cards on the table? Alright, on account of your guts, this lady will tell you that I feel that you have a shocking secret on you, and want to squeeze it out. Chapter 773. Ling Han stared at Yi Shuang. What's wrong? Are there flowers on my face? Yi Shuang said, I don't have flowers, but I'm curious. With your methods, can't you just interrogate me? Ling Han asked. Haha, are you born with a cheap bone? I didn't torture you, and you're still dissatisfied? Yi Shuang rolled up her sleeves and said, then I'd better not be polite. Ling Han waved his hand. I'm not being despicable, I'm just purely curious. What could make an ultimate warrior of the shattering void tier feel restrained? Yi Shuang tilted her head and thought for a while, then said, all right, although I'm a god, I'm suppressed by the great Tao of heaven and earth in this small world. As the saying goes, heaven and earth have eyes. If I go too far, I will be rejected by the power of the world. Isn't that perfect? You can return to the immortal world, Ling Han said. Yi Shuang rolled her eyes charmingly and said, if I could return to the divine realm at will, would I not want to? But this world is sealed by a killing formation. If I'm expelled by the power of the realm, I'll definitely be killed by the killing formation. You're a god, so you're the greatest. What are you afraid of? Ling Han laughed. Nonsense, this lady was suppressed for 100,000 years, and my essence blood was also sucked clean. If I still had the power from back then, would there still be a need to be afraid? Yi Shuang said very angrily. Just how many years have you lived for? Ling Han felt nauseous. This woman kept referring to herself as a young lady, but in reality, she was an extremely old monster. What's with that look of yours? This lady is forever young. Moreover, with this lady's lifespan, I'm only at the prime of my youth right now. Yi Shuang slapped the table, looking like she wanted to eat someone. Sure enough, age was a woman's reverse scale, and it couldn't be touched. Ling Han changed the topic and said, in other words, if you forcefully attack me, then you'll infuriate the grand Tao of the heavens and the earth, and then you'll be rejected and perish in the end. It's not that exaggerated. It's mainly because I cherish talent. Yi Shuang was not satisfied with his words. Ling Han knew that she wouldn't tell the whole truth. Naturally, she wouldn't reveal anything that involved the heart of the matter. But for the time being, the other party wouldn't attack him. He changed the topic and asked, do you know of the Azura Demon Emperor? A minion of the netherworld. What demon emperor? He dares to call himself an emperor? This lady is going to die of laughter, Yi Shuang said disdainfully. As expected of an immortal, he actually dared to look down on the Azura Demon Emperor. One had to know that the latter had been split into 9 parts and suppressed, and had still lived for who knew how many tens of thousands of years. He was practically a monster among monsters. Wait a minute, Ling Han was startled, and said, the Azura Demon Emperor is from the netherworld? A wisp of devil chi was born in the netherworld, and after countless years, it became a living being. It passed through the divine netherworld's barrier and entered the divine world, but it was defeated. I thought he was already dead, but it turns out he was sealed here, Yi Shuang said, but she immediately made a sound of surprise, and said, why didn't you kill him? Perhaps the Azura Demon Emperor escaped here, and the elites of the immortal realm can't enter? Ling Han speculated. Yi Shuang nodded at first, but then shook her head, and said, the small world repels outsiders. It's hard to come out, but even harder to enter. Even the people of the immortal realm are like this, not to mention the Azura Demon Emperor from the netherworld. There's definitely something strange about this. Ling Han was astounded. When he came, the Azura Demon Emperor was hunted down in the immortal realm, and finally had to escape into the small world of the vast lands. This was a very logical thing, so why was there something strange all of a sudden? What about the Thousand Corpse sect? I heard that the immortal realm also has this sect, Ling Han asked again. Brat, why do you have so many questions? Aren't you annoying? Yi Shuang's patience was obviously not very good. Come, bring out good tea, good melons, and good fruits. Ling Han waved his hand, and palace maids immediately delivered all kinds of delicacies, all grown in the Black Tower, but in order to deceive people, Ling Han put many in the storage, which was usually taken out from there. Do you think this lady is a foodie? Yi Shuang protested, but soon began to eat happily. The things grown in the Black Tower were indeed delicious, and even she was full of praises. All right, this lady will reveal some secrets to you today. However, each realm has its own rules, and this lady can't say too much, or else she might be targeted. She pointed at the sky, obviously referring to the Eye of Heavenly Tao. Ling Han nodded and said, you just talk casually, and I'll just listen casually. It doesn't count. Yi Shuang Shuang laughed mischievously and said, "The vast lands are a small world. The rules and space are incomplete, just like a sealed pond. The sky you guys can reach is only so big, and the world you can reach is only so wide. There's an end." Ling Han nodded. That was why shattering void-tier elites could strike down the stars in the sky. If it was a real world, each star would at least be the same size as the vast lands, so how could they possibly be struck down? And the divine realm can be said to be a continuous river and ocean. You can enter the lake from the river, and enter the ocean from the lake, boundless, Yi Shuang Shuang said. This is a large world, and at least as far as this lady knows, no one has been able to explore the end of this world. Ling Han was dumbstruck. Even gods didn't know how big the divine realm was, and what kind of grand world was this. However, between heaven and earth, if there's right, there must be opposite, if there's yin, there must be yang, and if there's right, there must be evil, Yi Shuang Shuang continued. Outside of the divine realm, there's an underworld that exists side by side with the divine realm, and can be seen as an overlapping space. But between each other, you can't reach me, and I can't reach you, not interfering with each other. But in reality, with the two worlds overlapping, how could there not be an effect? Underworld chi is constantly seeping into the divine realm, affecting the living beings of the divine realm, and the two worlds will also have conflicts. At the place where the impact is the fiercest, the realm wall is very, very thin, and the cultivators of the underworld can enter the divine realm at will. The Thousand Corpse sect is called the underworld in the divine realm, and was created by some almighty beings that entered the divine realm from the underworld. The Thousand Corpse sect is only one of its branches, and their goal is to bring chaos to the divine realm, turning it into a second underworld. If the two worlds can be fused, the level will definitely increase by a level. Ling Han was rendered speechless upon hearing this. He was still thinking of splitting open the sky and ascending to the immortal realm, but the immortal realm was not necessarily any safer. It had been targeted by the netherworld, and who knew when it would really become a world of demons and ghosts. Is the divine realm inferior to the underworld? He asked. Since the two worlds were parallel, then the divine realm shouldn't be weak. Yi Shuang Shuang rolled her eyes and said, "The underworld covets the divine realm, that's one thing, and whether or not it can be taken down is another. At least as far as this lady knows, although the two worlds have fought countless times in the past billions of years, now the underworld is still the underworld, and the divine realm is still the divine realm, and neither can do anything to the other. Besides, do you think the divine realm doesn't want to unify the underworld? Just two dogs, who can talk about being noble." Chapter 774. Yi Shuang Shuang really wasn't polite, directly scolding the two realms like dogs. Ling Han laughed loudly. He was also a daring person who liked to break rotten rules, and felt that Yi Shuang Shuang's temperament was somewhat to his liking. He couldn't help but yearn, and said, "After reaching the divine realm, I have to travel around." Yi Shuang Shuang sneered, and said, "If you can really succeed in splitting open the skies, then you'll definitely be forced by the divine realm's great forces to run to the realm wall to resist the netherworld's invading army." Ling Han frowned, and said, "Even if I can, I've only just advanced into the god tier. Wouldn't running to the realm wall to participate in the battle as cannon fodder?" "That's right." Yi Shuang Shuang clapped her hands, and said, "You'll be cannon fodder. If you don't die, how will they annex your country logically? You have to know that the territory in the divine realm is extremely tight. Which force doesn't want to establish a country, and which country doesn't want to expand its territory? Once you die, they'll marry your daughter, or marry a daughter to your son, and your divine country will naturally become their possession." Ling Han couldn't help but laugh, and said, "The divine realm's people are quite shameless." "Hee hee, you think that just because the divine realm has the word divine in it, they're all open and above-board people?" Yi Shuang Shuang sneered. "It's just that the arts they cultivate and the environment they're in are different. What's the difference between the netherworld and the divine realm?" Ling Han nodded. There were good people and bad people everywhere, and it was too arbitrary to divide them by region. "Then I have to plan well. There'll be big trouble after splitting open the skies, he murmured. However, that's something for a long time to come. First, I have to deal with the hurdle before me. Shuang obviously couldn't follow Ling Han to the west, and Ling Han didn't have such plans. If she oversaw the imperial city, it could be said to be foolproof. She was a god, and even if her vitality was greatly damaged, she could still rival the 9th layer of the shattering void tier. He gathered the army, and this time, he had to personally lead the army into battle. He would lead the army westward and conquer another city. After the sacrificial ceremony, the army set off and advanced towards the western region wall. Other than Helian Sun Shui, Lu Yutong, Li Sichan, and his parents who remained in the imperial city, the others all moved out, including Guang Yuan and Zhu Wujiao. The two of them had both advanced into the flower blossom tier. One was in the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier, while the other was in the 5th layer of the flower blossom tier. With the help of Ling Han's alchemical pills, even a stupid pig could ascend to the heavens. What more when they could be considered geniuses? There were only 1 million soldiers in the army. Compared to the population of the northern region, this was not a large number. But in an army, quality was more important than quantity. The level of martial art in the western region was higher than that of the northern region. What was the use of bringing a large number of ordinary soldiers? Among the million-strong army, there were 100,000 people who had reached the spiritual ocean tier and above. With 100 as a squad, 1,000 as a medium, and 10,000 as a great formation, these were the true elites. Cultivating the Purple Moon Empire's joint attack formation could greatly increase their battle prowess. The remaining 900,000 people were much weaker. They could barely be considered combat strength, as there were many complicated matters that couldn't be left to the elites. Report. When the army was still 3 days away from the region wall, the scout brought news to report. Speak, Ling Han said indifferently. Replying to your majesty, the western region is already prepared. They're currently resting their troops at the region wall, with a rough estimate of over 100,000 people, and each one is an elite, the scout said. Ling Han nodded. The scout's strength was limited, so he obviously couldn't distinguish the difference between the spiritual pedestal tier, the heaven tier, and the spiritual infant tier. However, the western region actually united so quickly and assembled at the region wall, putting on a stance of deciding the victor. This was somewhat out of his expectations. Because the forces of a region were too diverse, unlike how he only needed to give an order and the entire region had to obey. There were dozens of deity transformation tier forces in the western region, and it would probably take several months for these forces to reach a consensus. In addition to the issue of the number of elites each family dispatched, there would definitely be wrangling. No one wanted to consume too much of their own strength. Ling Han was slightly surprised that they had actually prepared themselves for battles so quickly. Your Majesty, subordinate is willing to take the lead, Yuan Cheng he requested. After so many days, he also polished his spiritual infant tier to an extremely solid state, and broke through to the deity transformation tier a dozen days ago, making him full of confidence. If he cultivated by himself, it would probably take at least 5 years to reach the deity transformation tier, but following an alchemy emperor and constantly taking medicine every day, it would be strange if he didn't advance like this. The rock spirit also howled, thumping its chest loudly, also requesting to go to battle. Compared to others, the rock spirit's progress was faster because it didn't have the barrier of martial art, and there was no such thing as a solid foundation. Every month, it gnawed on the stone essence in the Black Tower, and its tier soared. Now, it already advanced into the heaven tier, but it was still the same. The shattering void tier was too difficult to cross, and it probably had to gnaw on stones for another year or two to advance into the peak of humanity. Qian Wu Yong, Hu Feng Yu, and the others were also eager to try. In the few years at the Winter Moon sect, they only advanced into the spiritual ocean tier, but after entering the army, they advanced a step further in a short time and reached the spiritual pedestal tier, which naturally made them burst with confidence. Yu Kai Yu appeared much more mature, sitting quietly on the side, but his eyes similarly bloomed with the desire to fight. He advanced into the flower blossom tier, and his strength was similarly extraordinary. This time, They almost went all out on the Western expedition, so naturally, the elites of various sects were also mobilized, and there was no lack of spiritual infant-tier existences, but these old guys were much more low-key. They were well aware that the level of martial art in the West region was above that in the North region. It was good enough that they didn't come to attack them, but now they actually wanted to take the initiative to kill. If it weren't for Ling Han's order, they really wanted to turn around and leave. Ling Han smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Let's go to the region wall first, and see how many elites the West region dispatched." 100,000 elite troops led the way, and 2 days later, they arrived at the region wall. Sure enough, ahead was an expanse of military tents, and countless people could be seen entering and exiting. Although there was no military discipline to speak of, each one was at least in the spiritual pedestal tier, and their individual combat strength was extremely tyrannical. With such a large army arriving, the West region naturally immediately reacted. Everyone came out of the military tents and stood scattered. It could be clearly seen that there were countless small groups, and obviously, each small group came from a different force, with no intention of joining forces with others. This was very normal. Even if they were people of the same region, it was precisely because they came from the same region that the hatred was great, because it was impossible for the forces of the outer region to become enemies, and they all fought among themselves. Now, although they were fighting against the North region together, the people of the West region could rest assured leaving their backs to their competitors. Who would be so stupid? On the contrary, the Great Ling Empire's army scattered all the forces and divided them into various small teams, so they could only unite and cooperate. Where would they give you the chance to form a small circle? Ling Han walked out, and Zhu Xian Air, Hu Niu Rock Spirit, and the others all followed behind him, arriving at the boundary of the region wall. As long as he opened up a gap with the Revere Life Sword, the great battle would naturally immediately erupt. At this moment, 5 youngsters walked out from the West region's camp, each of them peerless in style and bearing an invincible bearing. Su Xiuran, Jia Ming, Dongling. Chapter 775. With Ling Han, the nemesis of puppets, and the protection of the Azura Demon Emperor, elite at the Pseudo-Sun Moon tier, they finally managed to exterminate all of these puppets. Yin Yuanxiang, Fu Tian, and Jin Zhihui all sighed with emotion. If it weren't for Ling Han, they definitely wouldn't have been able to escape this calamity. No matter how powerful or freakish they were, how could they possibly be a match for Pseudo-Sun Moon tier puppets? Didn't they see that even Yang Taichung had suffered a calamity? When speaking of Yang Taichung, everyone sighed slightly. This person was able to adhere to his principles, which was truly rare and commendable in the current world. The moment the battle ended, Fu Tian began to heal his wounds. Previously, he had forcibly endured the battle, not wanting to be a burden to others. His personality could be said to be extremely headstrong. The Azura Demon Emperor asked, "Master, should we pursue that crippled old man?" Ling Han pondered for a moment before shaking his head and saying, "There's no need. He's the local tyrant here, and he's been here for tens of thousands of years. I'm sure that he definitely won't allow us to find him. But if we don't find him, he'll still continue to commit crimes," Xue Yinyu said. Ling Han said, "Then let's search here first to see if that old thief left behind any clues." In truth, we don't know anything about this old thief at all. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you find the right medicine. Master is wise. The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly said in a flattering voice. Ling Han tossed out a puppet bear and said, "Possess this puppet?" The Azura Demon Emperor didn't understand. Wasn't this puppet even stronger now? It had reached Pseudo-Sun Moon tier, and its battle prowess was who knew how many times stronger than the puppet bear. However, when he saw the look of disgust in Ling Han's eyes, he instantly understood. As a human, his master naturally hated turning humans into puppets. How could he dare to resist in the slightest? He hurriedly possessed the puppet bear. In any case, this kind of thing didn't have a life or a will, so it was extremely easy for him to swap it out. Ling Han used divine flames to burn the 2 human-shaped puppets to ashes. Previously, he had done it to deal with Pei Ji. Now, he naturally wanted to bury the dead so that they could rest in peace. The few of them began to search this workshop. At first, Ling Han didn't have too much hope. However, they found a diary here, which revealed the reason and process that Pei Ji had embarked on the path of a freak. As it turns out, the man and woman that he had turned into puppets were his senior brother and senior sister. All three of them had learned from the same puppeteer. He had always been secretly in love with senior sister, but senior sister had married his senior brother. He didn't show it on the surface, but after his master died, he poisoned the two of them. After restraining the two of them, he turned them into puppets. No wonder the male puppet's body was covered in sabers and swords. That was because Pei Ji hated him too much. What a freak. He even turned the woman he liked into a puppet. The diary also clearly described the process of him making his senior brother and senior sister. The insults, reprimands, anger, fear, and every other detail was very detailed. It was as if he wanted to keep revisiting these events through this diary. Shui Yinyu shook her head and said, being betrayed by one's own junior brother, and watching oneself being turned into a puppet with one's own eyes, what kind of darkness is this? Thus, one can't just rely on talent when taking a disciple. The most important factor is still one's character. Otherwise, it would be equivalent to raising a wolf by one's side. Ling Han was also very rueful, and this caused the Azura Demon Emperor to feel flustered. Master isn't hinting at me, right? Bling. Right at this moment, a flash of sword light appeared and pierced toward Ling Han's back. This strike was both quick and urgent. Moreover, it was far too unexpected. The battle had already ended, and there were only a few people left who had fought alongside him. Why would someone suddenly attack Ling Han? Pooh! This sword pierced deeply into Ling Han's body. He roared loudly and turned around to deliver a palm strike. Meanwhile, the Azura Demon Emperor also came to his senses, and he hurriedly roared as he swiped his claws at the attacker. The attacker didn't have time to draw her sword, so she could only loosen her grip. Her figure flipped, and she instantly retreated 15 to 20 meters. Like a cloud, she descended from the sky. She was none other than Yin Yuanxiang. Ling Han! Shui Yinyu exclaimed in shock, and she hurriedly caught Ling Han. Tears involuntarily flowed from her eyes. This sword had pierced through Ling Han's body, and only the hilt of the sword remained outside. Meanwhile, Jin Zhihui was both furious and shocked, and he roared at Yin Yuanxiang, What are you doing? Only Fu Tian was still sitting on the ground. However, it could be felt that his muscles were involuntarily tensing up. Meanwhile, Ling Han stared at Yin Yuanxiang and said in a raspy voice, So you're the true culprit on the ship. Why do you say that? Yin Yuanxiang's previous cautious expression was replaced by one of arrogance. At the same time, her aura also underwent an earth-shattering transformation, instantly rising to the consummate level. Ling Han coughed and his face became even paler. He said, before Zhou Gaoyang died, he once said that he wasn't the culprit. Yin Yuanxiang's attack had succeeded, so she wasn't in a hurry right now. She said, in order to survive, he naturally said whatever he wanted. Ling Han shook his head and said, if he was the culprit, he would have only begged for mercy. He wouldn't have argued that he wasn't the culprit. So you're starting to suspect him? Yin Yuanxiang was slightly surprised. Indeed. Ling Han nodded and said, I was thinking that since the Dark Knight Hall could send one assassin, why couldn't they send two? One in the open and one in the dark? Yin Yuanxiang hesitated for a moment before laughing loudly and saying, that's right. At this point, there's no need for me to hide anymore. I'm indeed an assassin from the Dark Knight Hall. However, don't even think about stalling for time. That sword is laced with lethal poison, and even an elite at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier would die if they were struck by it. Shui Yinyu was astonished. She was confident in Ling Han's recovery ability, but poison was a completely different matter. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, it's good that you've admitted to it. I was only suspecting before, but now, I've finally confirmed it. He straightened his body and released his left arm. However, the sword that had stabbed into his body fell to the ground. As it turned out, The sword hadn't stabbed into his body at all. Instead, it had been wedged between his arm and his body. What? Yin Yuanxiang's expression changed drastically. She was filled with disbelief and she said, "I clearly stabbed your heart. There's no way that I could have made a mistake." She stared at Ling Han and said, "Unless you were already prepared and moved your bones." Ling Han broke into a smile and said, "Since I suspected that there was an assassin from the Dark Night Hall here, how could I not be on guard? But why did you suspect me?" Yin Yuanxiang was confused, and she said, "I clearly used a secret technique to suppress my cultivation level. To say nothing of you, even low-level Sun-Moon tier elites might not be able to penetrate my body." Ling Han nodded and said, "You indeed concealed your cultivation very well. However, when you were surrounded by the puppets, you still unleashed a power that far surpassed your cultivation level. This made me suspicious and wary." Yin Yuanxiang faltered upon hearing this. The situation had been so chaotic just then, yet Ling Han still had the leisure to watch over the entire battlefield? What kind of freak was he? There was nothing she could do about it. After all, Ling Han's divine sense was far more powerful than that of an ordinary cultivator at the medium extreme. "Since I can't kill you with the simple method, I can only use the difficult method." Yin Yuanxiang chuckled coldly. She drew another sword, and a sinister aura radiated from her body. This was an elite at the consummate level. Chapter 776. Ling Han turned around abruptly, only to see that Dong Ling already had a scroll in her hand. It was this thing that made him feel an incomparable chill, and his scalp was going numb. Was this a shattering void tier law decree? Other than that, Ling Han couldn't think of anything else that could make him feel such a strong sense of danger. Shattering void tier, the strongest in the world, crushing heaven tier elites wasn't just a little. I can kill him," Su Xiaoran also discovered, and said discontentedly. "The Venerables have said that the sole mission of this trip is to kill this person," Dong Ling said coldly, not giving Su Xiaoran any face. She slowly opened the scroll, and immediately, a frightening power swept over, causing everyone to feel panic. Shattering void tier, the existence that stood at the peak of humanity, and even a trace of aura could make heaven and earth lose color. In the scroll, white divine light constantly flew. It was clearly Dong Ling opening the scroll, but it was as if she didn't exist, and only that scroll remained between heaven and earth, conveying the will of the heavens. It was definitely a shattering void tier law decree. Ling Han nodded inwardly. The 5 great sects were really generous, taking out such a law decree. One had to know that this wasn't something that a shattering void tier elite was willing to expend their own cultivation to write. How precious were the materials? If it wasn't a shattering void tier beast skin, how could it bear the shattering void tier's will? If it wasn't a shattering void tier's blood essence, how could it possibly leave a mark on such a beast's skin? But how many shattering void tier beasts were there in the world? So, the 5 great sects were really generous this time. Su Xiaoran snorted, but didn't say anything else. His personal will obviously couldn't override the interests of the sect, even if he was the most outstanding genius of the absolute saber sect in 10,000 years. When the scroll was completely opened, white light intertwined and formed a cloud phoenix with wings 300 meters long, emitting an unparalleled might. Shattering void tier following Dong Ling finger, the cloud phoenix cried out, and with a flap of its wings, the blue sky was about to collapse as it hurriedly flew towards Ling Han. When a shattering void tier elite made a move, would a deity transformation tier still have the qualifications to resist? Not to mention a deity transformation tier, even a heaven tier warrior who defied the natural order wouldn't be able to, just like how a spiritual pedestal tier warrior couldn't rival a flower blossom tier warrior. This was insurmountable. But at this moment, the temperature of the air dropped rapidly. Everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Their bodies involuntarily shivered, and they instantly lost their will to fight. They only wanted to hug their arms to avoid the cold. With a dragon roar, an ice-white true dragon appeared and swung its claw at Yunfeng. Boom! The 2 great divine beasts clashed. The momentum was shocking. In theory, a true phoenix would never lose to a true dragon. It was just that true dragons were relatively stronger. That was why the god realm used true dragons as its standard of measurement. But the problem was that neither of them were real mythological beasts. One was formed by a formation, while the other was formed by a decree. Peng, with a single collision, Yun Feng was immediately sent flying. She was actually not a match for Ling Han. Ling Han smiled proudly. He had already expected this result. How did the decree's attack come about? Martial artists used their own blood essence to brand the will of martial art on the talisman paper, and when it was unfolded, it could form an attack, no different from a spirit talisman. In this way, the power of the decree was limited by 2 points. First, the martial artist's strength, and second, the quality of the talisman paper. The talisman paper used for a Shattering Void Tier decree was definitely the skin of a Shattering Void Tier beast. If the beast was only in the 3rd layer of the Shattering Void Tier, then it definitely couldn't bear the will of martial art of the 4th layer of the Shattering Void Tier. Similarly, even if the talisman paper was in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void Tier, the maker only had the strength of the 3rd layer of the Shattering Void Tier, so the decree made would at most have the power of the 3rd layer of the Shattering Void Tier. It was a two-way restriction, a two-way decision. Shattering Void Tier beasts were pitifully few in the first place. How could there be high-level ones for you to slaughter and use? The beast's skin was a precious treasure that could be used to refine high-level armor. Making a decree was truly too extravagant. In addition, writing a decree required the use of one's own blood essence, which was also a great consumption for Shattering Void Tier elites, who would be willing to do it. Thus, Ling Han estimated that the power of this decree wouldn't exceed 5 stars of the Shattering Void Tier, and as he expected, the Cloud Phoenix was sent flying by the Ice Dragon with a single strike, possibly only having battle prowess of 2 to 3 stars of the Shattering Void Tier. What? Su Xiaoran and the others all exclaimed. That was a decree personally refined by a Shattering Void Tier elite, so how could it not even withstand a single blow? That Ice Dragon, they were all dumbstruck. With their eyesight, they could obviously see that it was a formation, and the biggest difference between a formation and a decree was that a decree would naturally become a piece of waste paper after the Shattering Void Tier's blood essence was burned out. However, a formation was different. As long as heaven and earth existed, it could endlessly extract spiritual chi, and its power wouldn't decrease. If the decree was strong, it could destroy the formation in one go, and no matter how much strength you had, it would be useless. However, the key was that the formation was strong now. How could they still play? Su Xiaoran shook the Absolute Saber and said, "Ling Han, no one uses the trump card of the Shattering Void Tier. I'll fight you." Ling Han shook his head and said, "Sorry, now is a war between 2 armies, not the time to compete in individual strength." He drove the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation to charge over with the 4 great geniuses. Damn it! Su Xiaoran shouted angrily, and had no choice but to revive the Absolute Saber. A terrifying supreme aura overflowed, and the Absolute Saber floated in the air, illuminating the blue sky. With the revival of the Absolute Saber, the Revere Life Sword also automatically operated, starting a confrontation with the Absolute Saber. Now, the number of Shattering Void Tier elites on both sides was equal. The Absolute Saber and the Revere Life Sword were also old rivals, and it was hard to determine who was superior, but the Ice Dragon was definitely stronger than the Cloud Phoenix. Moreover, the duration of the decree's existence was limited, and once it was exhausted, the West region's allied forces could only be slaughtered. Su Xiaoran and the other 4 great geniuses' expressions changed. Who would have thought that after such a long time, Ling Han possessed Shattering Void Tier battle prowess? Retreat, we miscalculated, we must ask a Shattering Void Tier elite to personally attack. Moreover, they must have at least 5 stars of Shattering Void Tier battle prowess. The 4 great geniuses immediately gave up fighting, and with the Absolute Saber and Shattering Void Tier's decree as protection, they quickly retreated. Ling Han gave up after chasing for a while. Now, his focus was to conquer the West region, and as for the grudges with Su Xiaoran and the others, they could be settled later. As long as he advanced into the Heaven Tier, none of these people would be his match, and when he advanced into the shattering void tier, he would also be invincible. When he returned, he saw that the Son of Lightning had already run away. Hunyo didn't suffer a loss, showing her terrifying strength. This was the #1 freak in the world. After this battle, the West region's allied forces were completely defeated. Several deity transformation tier elites were killed, and high-end battle prowess was greatly weakened. Leaving behind the rock spirit to assist the army in continuing the conquest, Ling Han, Hunyo, Zhu Xian and the others returned to the North region. Although the East region's invasion could ensure that the imperial city wouldn't be lost, the city falling into his hands would affect the nation's fortune, after all. They set foot on the road back, and on the third day, a man appeared in the middle of the road with a table placed in front of him. He sat on an armchair and was sipping tea, looking leisurely and contented. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.